Alright, let's do this. Hitting the live button. Alright, so it should be going live. Alright, looks like we're probably live. So, welcome everyone. This is On Just Restart. This is the On Just Restart podcast we do every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Those in the chat, let me know how everything is looking and sounding, because I would love it if things were working appropriately. Anyways, we started a little bit later than usual this time around, basically because just way too much going on. There's way too much going on in my life right now between work and other things, and then everything is going on with the news and such. There's a lot, and that's what we're going to be talking about, the news and the rumors, and it's just all over the place. We're going to be talking about this imminent Switch announcement, this Switch Pro announcement that's coming very soon. There's even a chance, a small chance, that during this podcast it is announced, potentially. Not going to assume that's to be the case, but it's possible that in Japan, Monday morning, they're going to be like, hey, let's just pop this up, and it'll be Sunday night for us, like now, so it is possible that we will get a Switch Pro announcement during this podcast. But regardless, it is coming up very soon. It's been reported by several sources, such as Bloomberg, Eurogamer, Emily Rogers, all known to have good sources, to have great track records. And yeah, this is something that's been corroborated from many places. So we're going to be talking about the Switch Pro. But the thing about the Switch Pro is that it's a big deal because it's looking like Nintendo's entire E3 plan is surrounding this. This could have huge implications for Breath of the Wild 2, for example. So we're going to be talking about Breath of the Wild 2 and how it could be related to this Switch Pro. We're also going to be talking about Metroid rumors, Donkey Kong rumors. We're going to be talking about Splatoon 3 and Pokemon, because we also got release dates for Pokemon Legends Arceus and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So we have a lot to sort of extrapolate and talk about tonight. We will be getting into the chat throughout the discussion, of course. But before we do that, let me introduce my good friends and guests, Cameron from GameBird Classic and Brandon from WhataboutNodnard. How are you guys doing?
Good. Excited to be back. We got a lot of exciting news to talk about tonight. So it feels like a good time to be a Nintendo fan right now. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah. I'm ridiculously hyped for this because I kind of buy into the rumors so far more and more as the days have been going on. And I'm just like, oh, I'm probably this week, probably when we're going to get it. So I'm just like, at the edge of my seat, like, Nintendo, announce it, please. I've been waiting years. Oh,
yeah, it's finally happening. It's nuts. It's one of those things where, like, and I'll sort of organize things a little bit better later. Just kind of letting people roll into the chat right now. I am seeing that people are saying that everything's looking and sounding good. Thank you so much, guys. But just to kind of put my thought out here, there was a lot of speculation leading up to today, and there will be more speculation leading up to E3 for sure. But there's just kind of like, there's different arguments on the internet you see. Some people argue that, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to get Earthbound 64 HD Ultra 4K. We're going to get Metroid Prime 5 and Metroid Prime 4 in a dual pack. We're going to get Breath of the Wild 7 and Mario Odyssey 2 and Mario Kart 9 plus 10 and Smash Bros. Ultimate Deluxe all in one presentation. Like, you have that one side where it sort of overhypes things to an unrealistic sort of extent. And then you have the other end where there is a great deal of pessimism and doesn't believe we'll get very much. And then there's everything in between, right? Like, there's been a lot of sort of discussion and speculation coming from information we've gotten from insiders about what we do know. And what's been sort of suggested throughout the year is that maybe we don't get Breath of the Wild 2. Maybe all we get is Skyward Sword HD. And maybe we don't get any other sort of big 3D games from Nintendo, but we just get a lot of remasters and a few side-scrollers. And those are all great things, but maybe no Mario Kart, maybe no Splatoon or anything like that. So, there's a lot of different, like, sort of perspectives there. But I gotta tell you, in terms of, like, what we may actually get on this spectrum of, like, really pessimistic output from Nintendo and really optimistic output from Nintendo, I feel like we're on the left side, the optimistic side And that's really great because the optimistic side all the way on that end is just like ridiculously impossible. And I'm not saying we're gonna get like the most ridiculous lineup of all time, but it is looking like Nintendo's gonna be putting together a really good show. There's gonna be a lot to be excited about if you are a Nintendo fan, and I mean that has me excited because that's exactly what I am. I am a Nintendo fanboy to the extreme. So I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. I'm there with you 100%. And I think 2021 is an important year for Nintendo. We know, the competitors are trying their best to ramp up production of their new next-gen consoles. We know that there's some big games on the horizon, whether it's Halo from Microsoft or God of War or Horizon from Sony. So I think Nintendo's going to want to impress, and I think they've got some really exciting stuff. I mean, we already know Zelda's coming. We already know Metroid Prime is coming, but we also know that there's a bunch of other goodies that just haven't been yet revealed.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
There is always those games you don't expect, and sometimes they're some of the coolest ones.
Yeah.
So I am hyped for what we kind of know about, but I'm also like, ooh, what are they going to surprise us with? What are we going to do? Like, man, nobody saw this coming, but it's amazing because Nintendo's kind of the best about that. They give you something you didn't know that you wanted.
Yeah. That's exactly, like we've talked about how Microsoft may have a new IP, and we don't know what that is. Like, we could get that announced at this year's E3, and it could be one of our favorite new gaming franchises ever, right? Like, that could happen. Another possibility is what that team that made both ARMS and Mario Kart 8 has been working on. Maybe it is a new Mario Kart. Maybe it's something else altogether. Maybe it's another new IP or another franchise that they're bringing back that we haven't seen in a very long time. Maybe F-Zero, for example, or Wave Race. That could be incredible. And even if it's not that team, there's the possibility that Nintendo could be reaching out to another developer to work on some of these other franchises we'd love for them to go back to, like a Star Fox, like an F-Zero. So we don't know what we're going to see at E3 for in its entirety, at least, right? I do feel pretty good about our sources in terms of the Zeldas, maybe the Donkey Kong, maybe Metroid, things of that nature. But there is going to be more than that, even though I'm excited with Metroid, Donkey Kong, and Zelda alone. But there is going to be more than that, and we don't necessarily know what that's going to be. And that's really exciting for sure.
Yeah.
But let me start checking with the chat here, say hello to everyone. I see that people are rolling in. I greatly appreciate it, guys. Make sure to like the stream. Make sure to check out both Cameron's channel and Brandon's channel as well. They are linked in the description below. And if you could share out the podcast so more people could get in here, that will be greatly appreciated as well. But let's see how people are doing here. Hello there, Isonic. Charles, hello. Fraction, Hazed, Seth, how you guys doing? DE Fox, hello there. Basil, One Fear. Nintendo can announce the Switch Pro at any moment. Any moment. Like I was saying, it could conceivably happen during this live stream. I'm hoping not, because that would throw everything for a loop, but it's possible for sure. And it could maybe happen at any point this week. And we'll probably get to that first, just like when we can sort of start to see some of these announcements, because we are really close to Nintendo's E3. So the announcements need to happen like ASAP. So, things are coming, but we'll get to that in a moment. I just kind of want to run through the chat here. The Zesty car, that's probably not going to happen. I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you mean an announcement tonight, I hope you're right, because again, that would just I need a little bit of space here. There's too much news for me.
We have had times where Nintendo has announced things during the podcast before.
Yep.
I don't remember exactly what they were off the top of my head, but I know that has happened. So could. It's not a very high chance. Pretty low, but
it's conceivable. Happen. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we
really
knew about. Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's really cool when you're shocked by this crazy shadow drop that just like appears on Twitter or wherever. But sometimes I wish they'd be like, hey, we've got a special announcement. Stay tuned next week. And it's ambiguous. It could be anything. It could be a new game. It could be new hardware.
Could be Bakugan.
It could be Bakugan.
There's both ends of the spectrum here, right? That's not always what we want.
My stomach just knotted up when you said that. No, it's one of those things where like I want to be ready for it. You know, I hate when I wake up and it's like my phone's been blown up and people are like, oh my gosh,
and you feel like you missed out on stuff. Like, what's going on?
I'm like scrambling, trying to like get myself together. Got to get a video done. I'm like, oh my god, I'm missing out. But either way, it's gonna be just epic. Either way, if it's a shadow drop or an announced presentation, I'm excited.
Yeah. As a previous Nintendo content YouTuber person, and I know the pain of just being like, oh god, Nintendo, why now? Oh, scramble, I gotta get everything together, I gotta record something right now. Oh, this was not planned.
Well, it's hard too. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm like 3 hours earlier than any of the content creators on the East Coast. So it's always like 6 a.m, 5 a.m when stuff gets dropped. And I'm like just waking up and like there's already thousands of videos out. I'm like, no!
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. It really is. Yeah. I think that's why you just kind of just have to focus on being you, right? Consistent, right? Because the algorithm, but just gotta be you. But
give me a heads up, Nintendo, please.
Oh, that'd be nice, right?
At this point, though, if they give the heads up, it better be the Switch Pro, or otherwise people are gonna be mad.
They're gonna announce the Nintendo Garage DLC before a game comes out.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited for the Nintendo Garage thing. Actually,
yeah,
like that looks pretty cool.
That was a neat little surprise.
Yeah. I'm more into that than Miitopia. So it's probably the next game I'm buying for my Switch. Maybe, unless this is another really cool deal on the eShop. I actually just downloaded Okami, and then a few days before that, I downloaded Ori, and what's the sequel? Because I played the first one already.
Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah, I just downloaded Ori and the Blind Forest. I played the first one a couple weeks ago, and that was really good. So, yeah. But in terms of like new games, that Garage game is probably gonna be the first Nintendo Post game I'm gonna buy. The next one, I should say. But I see I have a super chat here from Nate Esquega. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you very much for the super chat. Nate says, keep building, Andres. You are on the start of a great channel. Thank you very much. I do hope this is just the beginning, and we're just scratching the surface for what's to come in the future. So thank you very much for that. I will keep building. But just kind of moving on with the chat here. Tyler Bakila, patiently waiting for Breath of the Wild 2 information. Yeah, we've been waiting for a while. Birdman, hello. I'm going to be on watch every second of the week. Yeah. Rescue Squad, hello there. Oh, Nashon Edwards, I hope we see Golden Sun is in development, since it's the 20th anniversary for the series this year. Even a confirmation of that would be nice, right? I feel like that is one of those franchises that we're gonna eventually get in the next installment for, but it's just gonna happen randomly, like out of nowhere, and it's just gonna be, oh, okay, I guess we're getting a new Golden Sun game. Great. Like, but it's gonna be random. Although, what if who's a? All right, this is me going crazy here, or maybe not. What if like they allowed Monolith Soft to work on Golden Sun? Like, they could probably make a mean Golden Sun game.
That'd be pretty hype. It
would be a different take on it for sure, but I would love to see what they could do. I mean, obviously, you get some of the original creators in there, they have their influence, but they could make a really awesome epic RPG.
Yeah.
Hello there, ASAP Rel. Abomination. If Breath of the Wild 2 releases in 2022, do you think it would release on March 3rd for the 5th anniversary, or would it release on another day of the month? So, firstly, I do not think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this March. It's been quite a roller coaster for that. We'll get into our release date expectations now with all the Switch Pro news, but I don't think it's coming out then. It could come out in March. It's still possible for sure, but I actually think it's coming out sooner. But in terms of the actual March 3rd day, let me take a look at the calendar here, because I think we usually get releases on Fridays, right? So if I kind of just speed through to March 2022, my calendar here, the first Friday of March 2022 is the 4th, so maybe then.
We have gotten stuff on Thursdays before. As long as it's not like the weekend, I feel like it's pretty viable.
It's possible. I don't really feel like they're gonna change around everything just to get it to be on the 5th year anniversary for the Switch. I really don't think that's that important for Nintendo. Yes, we have seen an increased emphasis on anniversary celebrations as of late when it's in like those 5-year intervals for sure. But when it comes to consoles, you don't do 5-year anniversary celebrations for consoles themselves.
Right.
You're more like, let's do what we can to lengthen this lifespan as much as we can or prepare for the next generation. It's a little bit different. For software, I don't think Nintendo would celebrate the 5-year anniversary for Breath of the Wild either. That just isn't... No. I don't really expect that. So I think if it happens, it's just because for whatever reason, that made the most sense to get it out by March. Like maybe they want to get it out early March because they want to give it as much time as possible before the fiscal year is over to get as much sales for both the game and the hardware. So yes, if it comes out, say March 4th in 2022, that gives them a few weeks before the end of their fiscal year so they can get out as much software and hardware as possible for that month. That's a possibility. But again, I don't think it's coming out in March anymore, but it is definitely still an option. Moving on here, I got a few ads and then we'll jump into all the topics here. Or in the Will of Wisps is one of them. That's right, Super Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the second one.
So I guess I beat the Blind Forest then, and I'm gonna play Will of the Wisps. Yeah, thank you. Game walkthroughs. When do you think Nintendo will announce their E3 plans? I've gotten this question a lot over the last few weeks, and initially, I remember Samus Hunter had suggested maybe May 6th, so I was looking at the May 6th date, and that didn't happen. But again, she said maybe, not absolutely. There was debate if it would just be like more of an internal thing or not, according to Samus Hunter. And again, we don't know if Samus Hunter is truly a leaker, but I feel like their track record has been so strong that I do believe there's something to what they're saying. Either A, they're just an ace predictor, like way better than everyone else out there, or they have legitimate information. I feel like I'm an ace predictor, which means I get things right 40 to 50% of the time. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm not that great of a predictor, but I feel like I am. But anyway, in terms of predicting when Nintendo will make their announcements, I actually have a feeling it's going to be this week. Just because if based off everything we've heard, the Switch Pro news is imminent. So this week, and I think with that Switch Pro news will come more talk of what's to come afterwards. I also feel like it's interesting that we got the release dates for Pokemon last week, and we also got a lot of these smaller Zelda news out beforehand as well. So I think even if we don't get Nintendo's actual E3 plans announced next week, which I think will be really strange, like really, really strange, we're getting an announcement for something, because presumably we're going to get the Switch Pro announcement, right? But also we're going to get the announcement of Nintendo's E3 plans, which includes a Direct and Treehouse footage and maybe some tournaments, maybe. And then also potentially also Pokemon Presents before E3. So those are 3 kind of major announcements that Nintendo needs to kind of make potentially before E3. Potentially we also don't see a Pokemon Presents this year and they just shove it into the E3 Direct, but that would be a first. So
yeah, that'd be strange.
No matter how you kind of spin it, with all of those potential announcements, you gotta think that something happens this coming week, because after this coming week, there's just one more week before E3. So I think this is the time to do it.
I'm thinking it would be this week, and I think they'll announce the Switch Pro or whatever it's called, and at the end of that, they'll be like, tune in at such and such time to see more games at E3 running on the Switch Pro or whatever. Yeah.
I was gonna say that exact same thing. I think if we get this Switch Pro presentation / reveal, they'll show off the tech, the new features, what this makes this different. Maybe we'll get some footage of a game running on it. But then I could see them for an even better look of whatever is coming to the Switch Pro. Stay tuned for E3 on these dates when we do our presentation. For more details, check out our official Twitter and Nintendo website.
Yeah, they'll probably have like an E3 website
Yeah.
Or at least a segment on the official E3 website, because it's kind of like bare bones right now.
It's going to be really interesting to see how Nintendo handles this, because there's a lot for them to do. Because I didn't want to jump into the Bloomberg topic just yet. Let me see here. We're doing it. We're jumping to the Bloomberg topic now. Here we go. So we'll get back to the chat in a little bit, guys. So let me just kind of explain what's going on here, and then I'll give you my take on exactly like how Nintendo should announce this, right? So we got a Bloomberg report last week, which is why you may have saw I made 2 different videos. They came out Thursday. So Thursday morning, we got news of the release dates for Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. And that was, I'm probably gonna make a video just talking about this roller coaster of emotions in terms of the big Breath of the Wild 2 release date debate. But when Legends Arceus was shown to be January, it was like a nope, it's not coming out this year, right? And I was like, oh man, because if Legends Arceus comes out in January, then that leaves March open. March is kind of like an ideal time for that. So that it does make a lot of sense for it to kind of happen then. So there was a lot of speculation for that, right? I was already talking to a friend about how I'm going to put together dubious food for my punishment. If you guys know, if I'm wrong about Breath of the Wild 2 and Switch Pro coming out this year, which I've been predicting for a few months already, then I will have to eat dubious food on camera, and you guys will see it, and it will be painful. So I was already planning how we're going to go about doing this, assuming I'm wrong, especially after Legends Arceus being confirmed for January, right? So we got that news. But then later into the day, I went and spoke to Samus Hunter, and I asked her a few things. And one of the big things I really wanted to ask her was, could Splatoon 3 come out by the end of the fiscal year? She told me that that's the plan, assuming there are no delays. Which, at that point, if you assume that to be the case, and again, we don't know how legitimate Samus Hunter truly is. I think there's some pretty good credibility there, but so definitely take it with a grain of salt. But if what Samus Hunter is saying is true, that Splatoon 3 is planned for the end of the fiscal year, or by the fiscal year, since they already told us 2022, there doesn't leave much really room for guessing there. It's either February or March if Legends Arceus is coming at the end of January, right? So Splatoon 3 would actually probably fit as a really strong fiscal year ending kind of game, right? So if Splatoon 3 comes out in March and Legends Arceus comes out in January, what does that mean for Zelda and a Switch Pro, which are also supposedly coming out by the end of the fiscal year? And then we got the Bloomberg report. And I was like, oh, schnapples. Bloomberg was saying that the Switch Pro will come out in either September or October. We don't know if it's actually called Switch Pro, by the way. We'll get to name speculation a little bit later. But they were saying it's going to be a more powerful system with 4K capabilities, with a bigger OLED screen, and it's coming out September or October. So if that's happening, that sort of suggests maybe other things like maybe Breath of the Wild 2. So that's why I kind of didn't know what was going on Thursday. So at 3 a.m, I spoke to Nate from Nintendo Prime, and we had a discussion together, which you saw, and I also made the video. So that's why that was all the Thursday craziness. It was a roller coaster of emotions with the Pokemon announcements, then the Splatoon 3 revelation I got from Samus Hunter, and then the Bloomberg report talking about Switch Pro coming out in either September or October. So it was just a huge crazy thing for me. But that was the initial news, that basically Switch Pro is coming out this year in either September or October. That's just kind of crazy. And then more things have come out since then. But just kind of keeping that in mind, right? Then we're also hearing that they're going to want to announce this before E3. That way, a lot of third parties can start showing off their games running on Switch Pro at E3. And presumably Nintendo will show their games running on Switch Pro as well at E3. So we're getting an announcement for Switch Pro really soon. And this, like we said earlier, this has been corroborated by several legitimate sources, such as Eurogamer and Bloomberg. So this is happening, and yeah, it's kind of crazy. But with all that in mind, right, how is Nintendo going to announce all these things? Because maybe they put out a trailer or something, and they talk about Switch Pro, but then they also have to announce what they're doing for a Direct and a Treehouse, and if they have tournaments, all of that, and then the Pokemon Presents. Can they do this all in one tweet? Or is there going to be a little bit more to it than that? Is this going to be a series of announcements? That's where I think there's going to be some sort of debate here.
I think it's more likely for it to be like a series of announcements. I think Pokemon will handle their own stuff, and then Nintendo will probably. I imagine the Switch Pro thing might be just out of the blue, with no lead up. Unfortunately, so no time to prepare. But it's just how Nintendo kind of has been doing things lately. So I wouldn't surprise me. And then that's probably when they'll have their E3 stuff. They'll probably talk about it a bit at the end of the trailer, but then have most of the information through like tweets and like websites afterwards. And they'll probably rank those like just those the two big things. So Pokemon will handle their own stuff, maybe not at the same time. Probably not the same time as the Switch Pro stuff. They kind of do their own thing, so it'll probably be on a different day. And then Nintendo will handle the Pro and E3 likely at the same time. I imagine one of the only reasons they haven't talked about their E3 stuff is because they want to talk about it at the same time as the Pro. Because like Microsoft, we already know when theirs is going to be with their Bethesda and Microsoft event, and I think we know a couple others as well already. So Nintendo's kind of like one of the last big ones to talk about when their stuff is, and it's almost E3.
Yeah. An interesting thing, I saw that apparently like the pinnacle contributors to E3 this year are both Nintendo and Microsoft. They are the top two. So Nintendo is like supposedly putting in a lot of effort here, yet we've seen nothing from them besides that we know that they're going to be there, right? So obviously the speculation is that they have all this cool stuff that they're sort of just waiting for like the last very minute to actually start talking about it. Brandon, I think I kind of agree with you that the Pokemon Present stuff, if that's happening separately, for sure. I agree with that. It can still happen all in the same week, right? Like, they can make the Switch Pro announcement and the E3 announcement on a Tuesday, and then on a Thursday make the Pokemon Presents announcement. Or maybe they do it on a Wednesday and we get the Presents on a Thursday. Like, that could all happen. Like, there's some leeway there, right? Like, Pokemon Presents, they could do it literally the week before E3. Like, that's totally possible too. As long as there's like some space between the Pokemon presentation and the E3 presentation, that'll be fine. So maybe we don't get the Pokemon Presents announcement until the final week before E3, and then a day or two later after the announcement, we actually get the presentation. But basically, that kind of sort of tells us, if something that to be the case, that this is the week we get all of the other stuff from Nintendo. And I've been envisioning that we get kind of like a first look trailer. The same way we got a first look trailer for the initial Switch back in, I want to say, was it October of 2016? And then we got the first look trailer for the Switch Lite as well. It's going to say first look. Like, I've actually, back on, because there was some debate if we would get the announcement like Thursday night or Friday. I was like refreshing on both Nintendo's YouTube page and their Twitter page, specifically looking for first look at, like, that's what I'm kind of like expecting maybe. And I could be wrong on that for sure, but that's just sort of what I'm sort of thinking right now, that we get like a trailer that says first look and they sort of showcase what the Switch Pro is. But here's the interesting thing about that. They're going to show footage of games. It's not just going to be hardware. Like, they're going to show some footage of games, I think. And I think some of those games may include some nice little beautiful things we could be seeing at E3. Maybe we get like a quick little teaser for Breath of the Wild 2, or maybe of the new Metroid game, or the new Donkey Kong game. Those all could potentially show up in this first look trailer. And I think they could also show off older games as well. Like, we've heard that maybe a lot of those games will be enhanced. Actually, Samus Turner tweeted about it. She told me beforehand that maybe that there are certain games that are going to be getting actual updates for the Switch Pro, such as Hyrule Warriors and Xenoblade. So, there could be something going on with that. They could show some of those games off in the trailer. But basically, I'm kind of thinking we're going to get a trailer like that. So maybe they put up that trailer, and then after that, they say, hey, look, you may have just saw the Switch Pro. We'll be talking about the more games for this system and more at our E3 Nintendo Direct. And also, we're going to be focusing on Breath of the Wild 2, Smash, Splatoon 3. Look forward to more news on these franchises and more. And then also, hey, we're going to have a Splatoon tournament, and we're going to have a Smash tournament. Like, it might be a series of tweets, and maybe they do like one per day of the week. I'm not sure, because there's a lot of information to sort of share. But I do kind of get the sense that this is all going to sort of start with the first look trailer at Switch Pro, whatever it's actually called, because I don't think it's been called Switch Pro, but you get my point.
Yep. Yeah, I think I agree with both of you guys about like kind of splitting up some of those announcements, the Switch Pro reveal, the Pokemon Presents. I think the Pokemon Presents will be closer to E3 time. But Switch Pro, like, I mean, we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast, and I always thought that this would be something that they would introduce outside of E3. I always felt like Nintendo's going to want to use E3 to focus on the software, focus on the games that they have coming for this year and early into next year, and that they kind of want to control the messaging with new hardware and just have like a little showcase. And they could always show more of the Switch Pro in E3, but I initially was expecting it after E3.
Same.
That kind of Breath of the Wild would be the focus. But as the rumors suggest, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to announce this before. You think about third-party companies that might have stuff that they want to announce for it, stuff that maybe, there's potential for some games that are Switch Pro only, and this would be a good opportunity to show those off in front of the general public. But I want to jump onto something that you said, Andres, because it's something that I've been wondering about and kind of having a feeling about. And you mentioned maybe we'll see Breath of the Wild 2 in that Pro presentation. And when I was thinking about this presentation, I was like, man, it would be so crazy if like the last thing we saw before the maybe E3 confirmation was like a quick, like really quick tease, a shot.
Just enough to
just enough to, like, for you to be like, oh crap, it's the Breath of the Wild 2.
Tune in on June 13th.
Exactly. For more information about the Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2. Boom.
Yeah, and then that's a good point.
And maybe they give us a release date, and they say both coming out October 29th, 2021. Right. That is when I think it's coming out.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the first things I was like, oh my gosh, like what if we get just a little morsel? Because obviously they're going to be saving the real Breath of the Wild 2 goodness for E3. But hey, just a quick little Easter egg in there.
On that note, let me just bring up one quick thing, because there's a super chat here from Tyler Bakila. Thank you very much. Tyler asks, how certain is everyone for Breath of the Wild 2 news at E3? I am very certain. Cameron is 100%. Very certain. Brandon is also very certain. Yeah, we are 100% believe Breath of the Wild 2 will be at E3. If it's not, I'm not going to eat my shoe. I'm just going to say I'm sorry I was wrong.
I'm going to be very confused.
Yeah.
Andres, I will say, as far as... I'll eat your shoe.
Okay.
I'll eat your shoe.
Okay. All right.
As far as
I'll send one to you. I'll make sure you clean it first.
Oh boy.
Oh god. As far as them showing a clip of Breath of the Wild 2, I mean, when they showed the initial Switch trailer, they showed a little bit of Mario Odyssey before we even knew what that was. They had gameplay of that, and we were like, "Whoa, a new Mario game!" What
Splatoon 2 as well. We knew about NBA 2K and Skyrim, but not for Switch. I remember there was so much debates about that. People were saying, "Oh, there's no way there's gonna be a Skyrim on Switch. That's just a." I don't know what that is, but it's not real.
Conversation about whether the clips were fake or not.
No, they were real. I mean, they were superimposed onto the screen, sure, but they
always are.
But they were actual real footage of games that were planned for Switch. Absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting how people were arguing that the Mario Odyssey footage was like a fake Mario game. No.
They made a whole demo game just for that trailer.
I remember then they announced Nintendo Revolution, which was just a codename for Nintendo Wii. There was they had a lot of proof of concept stuff, but they didn't actually show us footage. They just showed sound effects and controllers working on it. So we were like, oh my god, what is the Mario game she's playing? What is the Metroid game this guy is playing? Holy crap. We were excited about it back in the day. And there were games. It was Mario Galaxy, it was Metroid Prime 3, which were super hype, but they didn't actually show any footage, right? So at the time, they were just sort of suggesting what may be on the horizon, and they weren't just teasing things. They actually, that's what they were doing. They were teasing Galaxy and Metroid Prime 3, but they didn't show footage back then.
Wasn't there a thing where they showed the first glimpse we got of Metroid Prime 3 was just Samus's ship for a brief?
No, there was a random screenshot at one E3. Yeah, I think around that time they were even arguing that the next Nintendo system would be 4 times more powerful than the GameCube. That was wrong. It was 2 times more powerful.
Yeah,
but
yeah, they used to do stuff like that back then. I remember when Skyward Sword like first got announced before we had a name confirmation, but when they announced like the new Zelda's in development, they showed one thing, and it was that concept art, that really cool concept art with Link and Fi, and then all the theories were going off the roof and stuff. But yeah, they haven't really done anything like that for a while, like just teasing like a little concept art or anything like that. But
yeah,
I think people are really over the tech demo stuff as well as just like teasing. Just like, stop, please stop this.
We still get them, just not from Nintendo.
Yeah, that's
even
true.
A lot of like third-party companies are stopped doing. Not all of them, obviously, but there's less than there used to be.
Well, I think the last tech demo we got from Nintendo was, and it kind of turned into a game. It was the Project Robot that years later got incorporated into like Labo.
Yeah. Those were playable though. They were playable. Yeah. It was so weird. Like, but I mean, it was a good guess to say they would eventually turn into something. They did. Took a long time. But they did eventually materialize into something, which does get me wondering, like, will we ever see that what that canceled Metroid project turns into?
Seriously.
Yeah. But where were we here? I mean, there's so much.
There's a lot.
But let's come to a consensus on just what we're talking about in terms of like how they're gonna announce this thing, right? Like, so I guess you guys are kind of on the same page as me that maybe we get like a first look trailer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is that we see a couple glimpses of some of the games. Some of them will be older games, some of them will be newer games. And yeah, maybe they tease like Breath of the Wild to like at the very end, to your point, Cameron. But for the most part, it's just gonna be about telling us what this system is, what it does, what it offers. They're just gonna give us all the information. It's gonna be an overview trailer of the Switch Pro. We're gonna maybe even get the pricing and maybe even the release date right then. Maybe they don't give the release date immediately, maybe they wait a little bit longer, but I feel like they just give us all that information immediately. I don't know. I'm not 100% decided on that yet, but for sure we at least get like a release window for it. And they tell us all of that, but then at an E3 Direct, what they do, it's kind of how like maybe we see what Microsoft did for like the Series X stuff or the Xbox One X stuff, like where they say, oh, enhanced on Xbox One X, right? Like something like that, where they'll say, oh yeah, there's a better running version of Switch Pro in this trailer. Maybe it's just like a little bit of a logo they show in some of their trailers, and that's how we know the difference.
A little text blurb or something at the bottom of the screen. Yeah,
but they won't actually focus on Switch Pro at the E3 Direct, to your point, Cameron, that they'll kind of keep it outside of it.
They'll probably have like a treehouse segment when they look at the thing.
Yeah, that would be nice, actually.
That I could totally see, especially if they're doing some treehouse stuff of Breath of the Wild 2. I could see them really wanting to take advantage of the new hardware that's coming out, and they're going to be talking about like look how great this game looks in 4K, and showing off their killer app in its best form.
Yeah. And actually on that note, I think there's a chance maybe we don't see this at. I think there's a chance that we get a controller for Breath of the Wild 2. Like maybe there's not like an actual Breath of the Wild 2 console that they release, right? Because if it comes out at the same time as Switch Pro, they're not going to make the first Switch Pro a Zelda this like theme system. The same way the Switch itself wasn't a Zelda theme system, but there was a lot of Zelda theme items surrounding it, right? Like where's my Switch case? Like this. Like I got this at launch, right? Like this is epic. There could be stuff like that, right? I've been thinking that maybe we get like a Zelda or Breath of the Wild 2 themed Pro controller, right? That would be exciting. And I've just sort of had like this dream, and we've talked about it before, but like imagine like the green swirls, like but inside the Pro controller it's kind of like see-through. Like that would just be really, really cool if they could do something like that. I would buy that in a heartbeat, maybe too. So, maybe they could show off something like that in a treehouse as well. That'd be really nice.
Mm-hmm. That would be really cool. All the cool markings and stuff swirling around it.
Yeah. So, let me catch up with the chat here a little bit, and then there's still so much we want to talk about, because we got information telling us about more features for the Switch Pro, right? There's also something that's come to light about some other rumors we talked about in the past that may not be true anymore. So we'll be getting to that, and that's also going to tie into the release date speculation for Breath of the Wild 2. So we're gonna get to that in a little bit. I just kind of want to catch up with the chat here. Roger Dat Soldier, do you think they would put a teaser for this Switch Pro like they did with the Switch back in October 2016? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we just talked about, right? Like, yeah, it's going to be like a first look trailer. I think it's going to be more than a teaser, though. It's going to be kind of like an overview trailer. Roger That Soldier added me again. Question to you three. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a possibility we may see a new Mario Kart game at E3? I'm going to put, and I'm sorry for saying this, but it's just what I'm thinking, a 3 out of 10. Like, I think it's less likely than, it's like way under 50%. I don't think we're seeing a Mario Kart at E3 this year. And I would love to be wrong, but I'm gonna say a 3 out of 10.
I think it's highly unlikely. I think if we're gonna see Mario Kart 9, it's gonna be next year, the earliest. That's being generous too.
I don't really have much confidence that we'll see it at E3. I don't know. We haven't really been hearing too many things that like don't contradict themselves over and over again about Mario Kart.
Yeah.
So,
well, the other thing too is that like when you take into consideration like the already big titles that we know that Nintendo has in development that are not very far off, and then like the really credible leaks, stuff like a new Metroid game, stuff like a new Donkey Kong. We've got the new Monolith stuff. It seems a bit, with so much on the plate right now, it seems a bit premature to announce Mario Kart 9. Like, they just don't need to push that out right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know there's been debate that maybe we get like a Mario Kart 9 instead of Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday. Which, you know, isn't... I don't think that's a stupid thing to think. Like, it's certainly a possibility when you consider that COVID could have caused a delay for Breath of the Wild 2 to the point where maybe it doesn't come out this year. So that is still a possibility, right? Like, I'm predicting otherwise, even now. But it could, you know, that is all possible. And considering that the ARMS Mario Kart team hasn't come out with anything since ARMS back in 2017, yeah, they had some DLC, but that was it. They could have very reasonably made a whole new Mario Kart game since then, and it could come out this year. So it's not crazy to think that maybe there is like a Mario Kart game right around the corner that's maybe even ready for this holiday. That's totally like maybe a possibility. But to your point, Cameron, from everything we know so far, it doesn't feel like the cards are lining up for a Mario Kart to be a major release for the holiday. Granted, this is all assuming Breath of the Wild 2 and Splatoon 3 and Metroid and Donkey Kong and maybe like a Mario Party and a Fire Emblem remake are all coming out for this fiscal year, right? Like, that's with all that assumed to be true. Things can get pushed and delayed. We don't know what that team isn't working on either. It could be Mario Kart, it could be something else. So it's not like it's impossible. It's just that we don't have enough tangible information that's suggesting it as a strong possibility. And I wanted to say this as a next topic here, but there was someone who was suggesting that a big new Mario Kart was around the corner. We talked about on the channel, and that's Zippo from Reset Era. But here's the interesting thing. Zippo got banned from Reset Era again. Not the first time either. Wow. And I believe, and I don't know too much about this topic, so please forgive me, but from what I saw, basically Zippo was not able to confirm a lot of information that they were suggesting and not really be able to prove that they're an actual insider. And that's what Reset Era cares about. Like, if someone's claiming to be an insider, they want you to provide some sort of actual validation to that. Right. And Zippo's banned again. And this is very interesting because there's a lot of information that Zippo was talking about that, you know, was interesting. Basically, they were talking about there being a new Mario Party. They were talking about there being a new Donkey Kong, a new Metroid, all things that have been said by other people. They were talking about there being a big new Mario Kart. And they had this whole blog post, and they're actually saying people were stupid to argue that there wouldn't be a new Mario Kart on the way. And then Zippo also said that Breath of the Wild 2 probably isn't coming out this year. Like, probably not. But now, when you kind of consider what we've been hearing from other sources, that the Switch Pro is coming out this year, And everyone's pretty much in agreement that Switch Pro is going to come out with Breath of the Wild too. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but with that in mind, it sort of suggests the exact opposite, right? And then the other thing from Samus Hunter, who again, we don't know for sure is an insider, but they have a pretty good track record here. They're saying that they haven't heard anything about Mario Kart 9.
Yeah.
So what's going on, right? And also what's interesting, Zippo was saying, this is another topic we're talking about later into the podcast, but Zippo was also saying that the Donkey Kong game was going to be 2D. Except recently, Nate Drake was saying that from what he's heard, I don't want to like misquote him here. I talked about him in a previous video, but from what I extrapolated from it was that it was possible there was some confusion with a canceled Donkey Kong project in the past. So we're not entirely sure what is going on here, if it's 2D or 3D. He's not saying it's gonna be 3D. Just to be clear, just from what he said on Reset Era there, and from what I've heard personally as well, we're not sure what's actually going on with the Donkey Kong game. We just know there's a Donkey Kong game coming. We don't know if it's 2D or 3D yet. But Zippo was saying 2D for sure. So that's kind of interesting. Now, granted, I believe Nintendo Life put out a report, and they said they heard it was probably 2D. So, maybe it's still 2D. But the point is, there's some uncertainty with the information we're getting from Zippo, who multiple times we've talked about on the channel, and they've got a lot of things right in the past, so we've assumed that they have legitimate inside information, but maybe they've just been sort of piggybacking off of other insiders and not having legitimate information themselves. So, it kind of gives you a little bit more perspective here, right? Could be disappointing because maybe that it means we don't get Mario Kart, but at the same time, it also might mean that we get Breath of the Wild 2 this year, right? So that's pretty exciting. But that's just kind of something to consider here, because with that in mind, right? I think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year. I think it's going to come out in October. Now, why do I think October? Because the reports are saying Switch Pro is coming out September or October. And my opinion, I feel like October is a good time for Nintendo to release a really big game. We've seen them release Luigi's Mansion 3, which has sold 10 plus million before in October. We've seen them release Super Mario Odyssey, which has sold 20 plus million in October. So to release Breath of the Wild 2, there's probably going to be somewhere in that range as well, 10 to 20 million. That October time slot actually makes a lot of sense. So, if it's one of those 2 months, I would expect October also, because one more month later into the year, it just gives them a little bit more time to get things ready and good to go. And that could still be 3 to 4 to 5 weeks away from Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but it's still enough time before Black Friday so we can get out a lot of hardware there so they could really sell both Zelda and the Switch Pro before Black Friday. And I've actually been thinking specifically October 29th. And I'm biased because October 29th is my birthday. But hear me out. It's also a Friday. It's also 2 days before Halloween. And this is supposed to be a very, very dark Zelda game. So they kind of have a lot of things going for them. The October time slot, Halloween. I'm pretty sure Nintendo doesn't care about my birthday, but I'm just saying. And it's a Friday when they usually release things. It makes a lot of sense. It could happen earlier in October for sure. It could still conceivably happen in September. But considering that Skyward Sword is coming out in July, and I think there's also a Metroid game coming out in either August or September, October to me really feels like the month that's happening. What do you guys think?
Well, I've said it since day one. I think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out around close to holiday, fall time, 2021, and I stand by that. Now, I could be wrong. Breath of the Wild 2 could possibly bleed into next year.
Right.
But I really believe that game is, at the very least, meant to land this year. Now, there's always a possibility that the game could get delayed. And I know a lot of people might say, well, it doesn't have a release date yet, so it can't really be delayed. But I guess I mean like internal delays where the company is shooting for holiday time, hasn't announced the release date, but complications due to the pandemic and the chip shortage and whatever other problems they've had made them kind of push it back a little bit. I definitely don't think it's going to be a late 2022 game. I think this game is, if not almost ready, it's getting there. And I don't think they're going to finish it and just hold on to it for, like an entire year before they launch it.
I think we pretty much have confirmation of that. Basically because AG Nua told us that they're planning to give us details later this year. If Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be a late holiday, like a late 2022 game, I think they would have just held off on that information. They would have said, hey, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer and just let us get excited for Skyward Sword. They would not have said that more details are coming later this year.
Exactly. And, obviously them putting Legends Arceus in January kind of complicated speculation because it was like you said, like, whoa, then what is that big March game? But I think you make a great point with Splatoon 3. I was kind of leaning for that to be a summer game, but hey, if that game is almost ready, if that game is as far along as some of the leaks suggest, March is a good spot for that. Right at the end of the fiscal year, right in time for spring break, people are playing online, and
it would explain why they announced this so early. Like,
yeah, and that, I mean, they showed a pretty lengthy trailer. It wasn't like a little teaser, We got that kind of whole kind of like cinematic opening.
Like it looked like they already had like a pretty good skeleton of the game going. They had maps, they had the engine in place, they had the single player area, they had the hub area. Like it looked like the game was almost ready to be playable.
Yep.
I feel like if it was going to come out in summer, then they would have just announced it at E3 instead of announcing it so early.
Right.
Definitely.
I guess the interesting distinction to be made here is that they didn't say early 2022. They just said 2022, but for Pokemon, they said early 2022. Now, what's interesting, right, is that it's all about a lot of this is perspective, right? So, like, they said early 2022. I interpreted March 2022, right? A lot of other people are like, no, that means, like, June or May, right? And it ends up being January. But it's also worth noting that this is Pokemon Company. The way they market and advertise things is a little bit different from what the rest of Nintendo does, right? But then we look at the Splatoon 3 situation. They just said 2022. It could conceivably come out December 2022, and it wouldn't be a lie, right? But it also kind of makes you think, why would they announce it so far in advance? You look at most games that are given like somewhat of if we're given like an actual window, it's not that far in advance ever. Like, I mean, you have to exclude Metroid Prime 4. They didn't even give us a release date for that, for the record, or Breath of the Wild 2, for the record, or Bayonetta 3. They just said they were all in development. But when they actually give like a date, I don't think that means it's like 2 years away. So, I do think it means it's coming out sooner than later. And summer is not that much further off from March, right? Like 3 or 4 months later. Like, that's still, within reason. But if they are going to be showcasing Splatoon 3 at E3, if there's going to be like a Splatoon tournament, then, that suggests that they're very, very far along. And, typically Nintendo wants to focus their marketing on games coming out within the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So, if they announce it in February, it comes out the March in the following year. If it's 13 months later, that makes sense. I mean, when did we get confirmation of Animal Crossing New Horizons? Was that announced at E3? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was September.
I believe so.
I think it was a September Direct they teased it at the end.
You're right. And it came out how much later? A year and a half later?
It was supposed to come out the next year, but it came out
like a delay.
Yeah.
That was delayed.
So like a year and a half.
A year and a half. So that would be.
But it should have come out like a year after.
Right. So conceivably, Splatoon 3, if it were to come out March, it would just be like a couple months less before.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a 5-month difference, I guess, right? But that's also because Animal Crossing was delayed.
Yeah. Well, man, I think if they do a Splatoon 3 tournament at E3, I think that right there is definitely a telltale sign that the game is coming sooner than later. Because something like that, where they're having like the competitive scene, playing for, a global audience to watch and stuff, that obviously shows a lot of confidence that this game is, it's at a high level of polish enough to warrant that.
And another thing to consider here is that Nintendo recently overhauled their online servers, right? So they probably want to get out some pretty significant online games for that. Splatoon is probably like the premier sort of online-centric game from Nintendo. So to get out a new entry for that to showcase their better online servers makes a lot of sense. And if Switch Pro is coming out September or October, that means that Nintendo is going to be supporting this hardware with software, right? So it actually strengthens the argument for bigger games to be coming out sooner than later. So getting out a big game like Splatoon 3 for March makes a lot of sense if Breath of the Wild 2 is like that Switch Pro launch game in October.
Yeah.
Could be something else though. Like it doesn't have to be Splatoon 3, right? Could be something else.
Right. It could be something else.
But I feel like it makes more sense to predict something that's already been announced. You know,
sure.
That looks to be very far along. Yeah, Bayonetta 3. I'll give you some pushback though and say that Bayonetta 3 doesn't feel like a March game to me. I feel like Bayonetta 3 comes out just in a different time. It's not like a fiscal year closing game in my opinion. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Bayonetta 3 is going to completely like change my mind on that. But maybe it is like a game that does come out this year though, right? Let's say we get Breath of the Wild 2 in October and then Pokemon in November, maybe we get something in December. Like why can't it be Bayonetta 3?
I feel like Bayonetta 3 is going to be one of those games like I personally am a big Bayonetta fan. I love the first and the second game. But this third one's had a long development time. And you know, they've got backing by Nintendo. They've got more resources than they had before. I have a feeling that this game is going to surprise not only people who haven't played Bayonetta before, but fans of the series already. I think they're going for something a little bit more ambitious with this next game. And I don't know. I feel like this one is going to be a bigger deal than the first two were. Yeah. That's just my gut.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, there are interviews to suggest that very thing, that they want this to be the biggest, most ambitious one yet. So I absolutely am with you. And if that comes out, this doesn't have to come out this year, right? But like with the Switch Pro in mind, like, you know, this could be like a real looker, right? It can attract more of that hardcore audience, which is what Bayonetta appeals to, the hardcore audience there. You know, it could do really well.
Well, especially if we get like a game like that, if we could see it running on the Switch Pro model at 4K 60 frames per second, you know, just that lightning fast action and stuff, like that's going to be a real show stealer, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even the first two games still hold up really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine the third one will look even better than those. I imagine it will be maybe even one of the best looking games on Switch Pro for its entire lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I just read this chat from Kristen Rinya. It's funny. This is unrelated, but OMG, I studied classical history and you look like an ancient Alexandrian pot tomb painting in a Pokemon t-shirt. I'm gonna take that as a compliment, so thank you.
That is amazing.
Yay, the podcast dojo. There should be one more announcement before E3. One more announcement. Okay. One more. Huh. Wonder what it's gonna be. Let's see here. iSonic added me. Oh, damn, the chat just jumped up. I missed your chat, iSonic. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get back to it. I don't like how the chat just jumps like that sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's annoying.
Okay. Do you OG Switch owners should be worried about the Pro for both exclusives and games that would be badly optimized for the OG Switch? Just hope it won't ruin games for OG Switch. So I guess the basic point here is that should we be concerned about the base Switch running games poorly, since a lot of games are going to be made with Switch Pro in mind? Is that what you're getting at? I am probably the optimist here, and I'm going to say it's going to be fine. I feel like if you're the kind of person that doesn't really care to get a 4K television and get a Switch Pro, that you're not going to necessarily care for those differences. Like, it may be considered more subtle to you as opposed to significant. Like, not everyone needs their games to be at 60 frames per second. There are people that will swear by it, right? And others that will say, it looks the same to me, right? Like, there's audiences here, right? Now, not everyone feels the same about everything. And the same thing with resolution. There are some people that'll see a game in 720p and say it looks fine. They'll see a game that's running at 4K and they'll say it also looks fine. And they might say, oh, I guess that 4K one looks a little better, but they won't make a big deal about it, right? Like, so I guess my point is that for some people, those subtle differences are subtle, while for others they are significant. And the people that for it's significant for, perhaps those are the people that are going to prefer to get a 4K Switch, right? I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I don't think for a lot of people who have the base Switch who don't care for 4K Switch are going to be too concerned about performance, I guess. I mean, it's not to say that all games are going to run poorly on base Switch. I feel like, at least when it comes to Nintendo games themselves, like Nintendo published games, they're going to run relatively well. I don't think they're going to run poorly. Now, I could see a situation where there are some third-party games, though, where, yes, they will come out for the Switch. They won't run great on base Switch, but will run well on the new Switch. Like, I can see that. We've seen that happen a lot of times before, not just on Nintendo systems, but also on the other systems. Like, there was some situations with the new Nintendo 3DS, for example, but also a more recent example is the Cyberpunk situation. Like, that's like to the worst degree, right? But they advertised that game, and in the advertising and such, it looked fine, and it ran well enough, I should say, on PS5 and Series X. But it also came up for PS4 and Xbox One, and it ran like garbage. And that's me being nice. So there have been times where this has happened, but you know what happened though? Like, this, they didn't go over well. There's a lot of issues that came from that. It was not a good PR situation at all. People were refunded their games. Like, if this happens again to them, it's not going to go over well. So I don't think that's going to fly too often when it's to a significant degree. But yes, I think there are going to be some situations where games won't run as well as they should because of Switch Pro. I kind of agree with that. I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal in the long run.
Yeah, I'm optimistic too. It's not something that I'm personally concerned about. Granted, I do fully expect there to be some third-party exclusives to the new Switch hardware, the more powerful hardware, especially if it's games that they just couldn't put on the Switch. But I think Nintendo has a great opportunity and a solution to this problem. Now, whether or not they'd embrace it, that's up to them. And for me, that's the cloud versions of games. This is something that they've done a few times now, to varying degrees of success. They don't exactly run perfectly, but there's been a lot of talk and speculation about Microsoft and Nintendo possibly having something in the works. Maybe that's something like xCloud. I think if Nintendo was able to work with Microsoft, or even if Nintendo on their own wanted to kind of like update their online infrastructure and, take the cloud gaming a little bit more seriously, that's a great way to cater to people who don't want to upgrade or maybe don't have the money to upgrade. And they also don't want to feel like they're missing out on titles. I definitely think there are ways around it, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where you're just missing out on dozens of games. Like, you're always going to get your Zeldas, you're always going to get your Marios and Donkey Kongs and Smash Brothers. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see any Nintendo games having performance issues on the base Switch.
Yeah.
I mean, even with like Microsoft and Sony, their first party games always run incredibly well on even the base systems. So I don't see that being an issue. Nintendo has arguably even higher standards for performance and stability in their games.
Definitely.
So yeah, but I agree. Third-party games, they might be hit or miss. We've definitely seen that a lot on the new 3DS and on the Xbox One and PS4, where, I mean, they're usually not terrible, but they're definitely not amazing. But then again, we got to consider, like, we don't know how much more powerful the Switch Pro will be. We don't know how they're gonna be using that power. We don't know if it's mostly gonna be, just DLSS that gets you to 4K. And that's like the biggest upgrade. And then, CPU and RAM and things like that aren't super more powerful. So at that case, you just run at lower resolutions in the base Switch and they're practically the same. That might be the case.
I'll tell
maybe
you
the
that,
CPU and GPU is better as well. And we
yeah.
might see stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, just to your point, though, Emily Rogers is saying that it'll have new chips. So I feel like that implies more than
I
just
have to
like
have
an
new chips.
upscaling, right? I mean, maybe I'm mistaken there. Actually, I'm curious what you make of that. Like, if Emily Rogers is saying there's gonna be new chips, do you think that implies like the hardware itself is just gonna run better in general?
I don't think it implies that. I think it probably will be that. Like even on the new 3DS, like one of the big things they touted was that the CPU was a lot better, and the CPU is one of the biggest issues with the Switch currently. So I imagine they'll upgrade that just in general. But I mean, you have to have a new chipset to use the DLSS functions. Like you'd have to have something new for that. So that in itself doesn't really imply that, but I'd imagine that is how it's going to be. Probably better CPU, probably better RAM, and then the GPU might be more or less the same, but with DLSS, or it might be better. We don't know.
Right. Yeah. I'm just kind of continuing on with the chat here. Oh, Conservative Latino. Hey, Andres, you perfectly know who I am. I just wanted to say that there should be one more announcement, but prior to E3. Nice. Let's see here, Aiden Snew added me. To be honest, I feel like Zippo had a legit in with Nintendo. They got fired from him taking too much, and he's just been guessing lately to try and keep up the image online. I'll tell you that, like, I feel that in general, there are people who, yeah, like, if someone has, like, inside information, it's not guaranteed to be, like, a continuous sort of, like, set of information. Like, think about it, like for a lot of, like, the Smash leakers, like, they got some information right, and then eventually the well sort of drew up, like, it dried up. So there could be some truth to what you're saying there. I don't know. All I know is that it's seeming like, at least as of late, oh, look who decided to join the party. It's Onyx. You're late. We started at 9:15. What are you doing, buddy? But anyway, I just think that it's possible that maybe that's what they were doing. But either way, I guess I'm not putting too much credibility in what they're saying now, given that they've been banned multiple times already, and we're getting information that is to the contrary to what they've been saying. But none of it's been confirmed yet, so we'll see. You know, maybe what they put in their blog post ends up being true, and we are getting like a Mario Kart 9 or something like that, and Breath of the Wild 2 is a 2022 game. So if all of what they're saying proves to be true, then, you know, we'll kind of go back to that. But right now, I am definitely skeptical of what they've been saying lately. Nathan Adamy, what do you think the Switch Pro price will be? Oh, that's a great question. $1 million. You'll be able to afford it. Just take out a loan. I think
small loan of $1 million.
Yeah, if everyone does it, it'll be fine. I think the most it can cost is $400. I don't know. I guess one of the considerations we had here is that maybe Nintendo doesn't want to sort of get in the way of their current Switch owners, or their current potential Switch sales, I should say. Because if they are going to announce it next week, right, and it doesn't come out till September or October, whatever they do, I don't think they're going to position a way where for like, how many months is that? For June, July, August, 3 to 4 months of like of poor hardware sales because people know a better Switch is coming out. Like, I think it's going to be positioned in a way where it's going to kind of stand on its own for a while. I know the Bloomberg report was suggesting that the base Switch would phase out, and I'm not saying that isn't the case, but I think the timing of that is going to make a big difference here. So, like, I feel like the base Switch is still going to be relevant for a while. And I guess the point I'm making here is that how they position and market this Switch Pro, it's not going to be done in a way that's going to make the base Switch and the Switch Lite irrelevant. So I feel like pricing wise, I'm expecting $400, $399.99 USD. Maybe it's $349.99. Maybe it's $350 instead. But, you know, from the things we've heard, I feel like $400 might be what you should expect.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's $349. I could definitely see it being $399. I think that's like, it's a solid price point. But I also think that $349 is, you know, obviously Nintendo likes to try and make things a little bit more affordable, an easier barrier of entry, and I also think that's a nicer and more appealing price to anyone who might have an OG Switch and be looking to upgrade. That $50 off of the 400 is, it's a easier barrier of entry. But
I feel like it'd be weird to have that at 400 when you can get a fully powered like PS5 for the same price. Like, sure, it doesn't have a disc drive, but it's still like, it's not like the Xbox Series S where it's a lot less powerful. It's literally the exact same as the PS5, just no disc drive for 400. And with how popular the new systems have been, it's like, then you get into the context where like, do I pay $400 for this next gen system that just came out and it's brand new? Do I pay $400 for a better version of the Switch that's already been out for years?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird place to be in.
Do you think maybe they give a price drop to the base Switch?
I think that this new Switch, and we've seen rumors that have been kind of saying that this might be the case. I think it's going to be like the new 3DS, where it's a little bit more expensive, but like a ton more expensive than the 3DS. And then eventually it just goes down to the same price and just becomes the standard system.
$329 or something?
I think like $350 probably.
Okay, like $350.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if they do $350, I can see them getting down to $300 in the future. But what do you think that means for the base Switch? Do they just stop selling it and they just focus on Switch Lite?
See, that's one thing as far as like some of these.
I understand that maybe eventually, just like how like what about this year? Go on, Cameron. Sorry to interrupt you.
I was just saying like that's one part. Like Bloomberg obviously is an extremely credible. They'd never put BS out there just for the sake of it. They've got a very credible name, and when they put out information, it's because they do have very credible sources. But I am skeptical on the idea of Nintendo phasing out the base Switch, at least anytime soon. We know that the Switch, according to Nintendo, is roughly like it just passed that halfway mark of its lifespan.
Right.
I can't see Switch phasing out in a year, the OG model. That's like really fast. I can't even see it phasing out 2 years from now. So to me, 2 years from now, we'd be getting in the talks of what the real Switch successor is. And to me, that's kind of when I'd expect the base model to start phasing out, if it's going to where maybe their next console's coming out and maybe it's backwards compatible. Some of the stuff will still be coming out on the Switch Pro, but they're gearing up for their next system. It's just weird for me to picture them just being like, we're done manufacturing this piece of hardware now. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, look how long they kept the 3DS going, even into the Switch's life.
True,
that was
the new
a while.
3DS, not the original one. I feel like they might want to start phasing out in a year, maybe 2 years the most, just because I don't think they want to keep manufacturing that chip anymore. The newer model of the chip is still an old model, still an old process. And I feel like they would probably want to focus on the new model. I think it depends on how much traction it picks up and how they market it. Like the new 3DS, it took a little bit before they stopped producing the 3DS, the original one. But then people just stopped buying it too. Like people were all about the new 3DS. And eventually it was not too like at that time when it came out, like you could get a 3DS probably like $150, or a 3DS XL probably like $160, $170, and then boom, new 3DS, $200. And then like a year or two, then you could get one, even like a new 3DS XL for like $180 or less.
Yeah. 2 years I can see. I just don't think, like, I mean, I don't know. If this thing's coming out around September, October, I just can't see the original Switch being phased out by starting to phase out by next summer, fall time.
Yeah. I remember Samus Hunter was putting out information, again, it's a rumor, but Samus Hunter was putting out information that Nintendo would be sort of positioning, oh look, it's a cat party.
I know, right?
Kitten party. But this is what it is. Are we playing Mario 3D World? or Bowser's Fury. But
Bowser's Fury.
Yeah. But as I was saying though, from what Samus Hunter said, that there would be kind of like an enthusiast model that's like the Switch Pro, but then there's like the family model that's like the base Switch, right? And then there's the portable model, which is a Switch Lite. So, you know, maybe I think the argument was that they would also phase those out as well. Not an argument, that's what Samus was suggesting, that they would phase out the base Switch and the Switch Lite for newer versions of those. Like basically how like the Switch we have now is already an updated version. Like they would just have another sort of subtle upgrade like that. That I think is a possibility. Right. And maybe Bloomberg just not reporting on it because that's just we're just not at that point yet. I forget where, but I'm pretty sure I was talking to Nate at Nintendo Prime. It was on some video we were doing together, his podcast or the discussion we put up. But
I think it was the discussion.
Basically, I was saying just that, like, you know, there could be like, it's not that Samus Hunter's wrong. It's not that Bloomberg is wrong. It's just an interpretation of the information they're being given. And within that interpretation, there's wiggle room, right? Because one, it's information before it's being announced yet. And neither side perhaps has all the full details either, right? So, you know, how they're interpreting how that the base Switch will be phased out. Maybe it will be phased out, but it's not like it's getting phased out this year, right? And it will be phased out moving forward. And what's going to happen is that, you know, maybe that Switch Pro is it, or maybe it's still a Switch Pro and there's something else coming out later down the road. Hard to say for sure, but I would say at most the Switch Pro will be $400, but I understand you guys' point saying it could be $350. And if it's $350, maybe we see a price drop to the base Switch, or they are phasing that out and they're just gonna eventually remove it out of store shelves sooner or later. It's possible.
I don't think the $400 price tag is impossible. Like I definitely think that Nintendo could see it valued at that. And I mean, Brandon, you make some good points when you say like it could be hard to justify paying $400 for a Switch when you can get a PS5 for that much, or, you know, a Series S. But at the same time, like, I know Nintendo values the Switch very high, and that portability factor really plays a big part into that. When you think of computers, look at the value of like performance when you buy a laptop versus a PC. You know, laptops are a lot of money because they're portable and not nearly as powerful or as quick as a PC for the same price, you know?
Yeah.
I think Nintendo sees a lot of value in the portability, the hybrid nature of it, and they'll be like, yes, this costs the same as a PS5, but like you can only experience games like this anywhere you want, whenever you want on our platform.
Okay.
True. But it's also different when you have another cheaper model that I think will be much more popular. So it's like, it's different. Like when the Switch came out, it was like, people were like, you can buy a PS4 for $300 or even $250 or less. Yeah. I was like, yeah, but that was the only model of the Switch available. It was like, you're getting that or you're not playing it. At this point, it's like, well, I could get this $400 one, or I could play all the same games for $300 and then have more money to buy more games or have money to put into another system.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a hard to sell that.
Sure.
You have another option.
I'll just tell you that I have a hard time seeing Nintendo put out the Switch Pro for $350 and having the base Switch still out on the market for $300. I have a hard time seeing that. So something's got to change there. Either they price drop or they phase it out, or the Switch Pro is just $400 for a while and then slowly drop down that price. But before we continue on, I want to get to a couple super chats here. Aaron Curdy, advice for getting a Switch Pro before scalpers. Thank you very much for the super chat. I think the best advice I can give you is don't pre-order online. Pre-order at a store that you know will be doing pre-orders, because you can just literally walk in, get the pre-order, and then you'll be good to go. My personal experiences online is you can try, you can get lucky, but if you're not ready the moment they are announced, you're competing with the entire world here. When it's just a public store in your local town, you're not competing against the whole world, just anyone else there. So, and you can go to more than one place. That's how I've done it, but also I don't pre-order everything. I just pre-order like hardware or special collector's editions. So I recommend going to a local store. That's what I'm gonna do.
A tip that I have, this is something that helped me, is like if we get that Switch Pro presentation, And they do drop a release date in the presentation. Maybe they give a release date and stuff. Pre-orders available now. Let's just say that happens. Maybe it happens at E3. Get on Twitter right away, because there are a lot of people on Twitter who are really good about popping up like, hey guys, pre-orders available on this website, pre-orders available on this store, whatever. That helped me when I was getting my PS5. I had checked a few locations and they were sold out, and then I forget who it was. It may have been Wario64 popped up that PS5 pre-orders were available at Target, and I sped, just like driving like a madman to get there, and I got my hands on one day one, luckily. But that was super helpful, because there are people who are really good and they look for these things way better than I can on my own. So that's a tip I have.
Yeah, it's good advice. Were you gonna say something, Brandon?
It's just, I agree with you, Andres. Like, going in the store is probably one of the best ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did when I got both of the Switches I got day one. Even though those are selling out pretty hard, I managed to get one. I went to the store and I staked out. And then when they opened, I went and pre-ordered one. And then I went to pre-order another one, but I needed a separate card. So then I had to go back home and come back. And they still had like a couple more. So I managed to get two. So stores typically, especially if you live in areas where maybe gaming isn't as popular, or there's just a bunch more stores, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I got another super chat here from Verum Verbi. Thank you very much. Verum Verbi asks, ask your cat what she's looking forward to most for E3. So firstly, Onyx is a boy. I'm not going to show you how he's a boy, but he's a boy. And what he's looking forward to most for E3 is not me screaming in excitement when it happens. He's going to probably be hiding in fear, wondering why his owner is just screaming his eyes out. But in terms of the games that maybe be there, I feel like my cat will appreciate me playing Breath of the Wild 2. And probably also Donkey Kong and Metroid, because I just feel like all three of those games are going to have like really, really awesome music. And it's just going to be kind of like those games that I put on and I'm playing, and it's just kind of like a very chill vibe. And my cat will just be like, oh, I don't know what's going on screen, but it's cool. It doesn't scare me. All right. I can just kind of relax here while he plays this game. So I feel like that's what my cat will be looking forward to. Yeah. But moving on with the chat here. I'm gonna check a couple chats, and then I want to talk to you guys about the name of the Switch Pro, because that's we haven't talked about that yet. Let's see here. Knucklehead added me. The chat has agreed that Nintendo will be adding Earthworm Jim to Smash. We patiently expect the cooperation. Thank you. Earthworm Jim for Smash. All right, let it happen. It's a piece of history right there. Falsetto saying, yeah, Nintendo's never priced past $349. This will be a first. I don't know. You could be right. Maybe they don't go past $350.
They've also never made a hybrid home console, so
that runs games at 4K. Like it's a kind of a bit of a unique situation.
And Furukawa seems like an interesting president too. It seems like, you know, he's mentioned in a few interviews about research and development and new technologies. It seems like he might have a little bit of a different approach than we've seen before. This will be our first like real look at what the new Nintendo is post Iwata, because Iwata was the guy who planned the Switch and the Switch Lite. So we're kind of into new territory with Nintendo, with the Switch Pro and what lies beyond.
Yeah, it is a new territory for sure. Christopher Salas, shout out to your cat. My cat appreciates your shout out. Who else but Zane asks, do you think there will be a Switch Lite Pro? That's an interesting question. There definitely, in my opinion, won't be like a Switch Lite has 4K visuals, not this generation. I don't even think the Switch Pro is going to have beyond 720p. I think it's just going to be a better 720p screen. That's typically based off what we heard from previous reports. Maybe it's wrong, it's a 1080p screen, but I'm not expecting that. So I think we're a ways off before it's 4K capable. But if you mean just like kind of like an enhanced sort of version of the Switch Lite, maybe. I kind of feel like the Switch Lite currently is pretty good for what it is. But I guess also when you consider the potential enhancements we might get from the Switch Pro, then maybe, you know, those enhancements will want to become more of a standard thing. Nintendo will want to sort of standardize that. And maybe then that sort of leads into the next revision, which is an enhancement of the Switch Lite. That's possible. So I think it could happen, but it kind of depends on what features the Switch Pro brings, because at that point, that may become sort of an expectation moving forward.
Yeah. I mean...
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
There are a ton of games on the Switch and Switch Lite portably that don't hit 720p. In fact, like, that's most of the games. So maybe they would want to do that. Just get the games, like, you know, most games run at 720p native, which would be nice. But again, it's like, it's supposed to be a cheaper model. So I don't know if they feel like they need to upgrade it. But maybe they'll lower the Switch Lite to like 150 or less, and then have a new Switch Lite Plus, and it's $200 again. I don't know.
I don't think that they need to upgrade the Switch Lite, but let's just say they felt the need. They're like, okay, the Switch Pro's doing really well. We're phasing out the original Switch. The Switch Lite's kind of getting left behind. I feel like the perfect solution to that would be to introduce a Switch Lite dock. And like, basically you don't need to buy a new Switch Lite. It's a special dock. Maybe that dock gives it a little boost to make it a little bit more on par with, you know, the current Switch. But yeah, I think a Switch Lite dock is like the only pro move they need to make.
I mean, it could be good for like manufacturing defects, because a lot of like, when you look in the PC GPU space, you see a lot of like 3060, and then there's the 3060 Ti, and there's like all of these like tiers in between. And the reason they do that is because sometimes different cores and parts of the chip don't work, so they can just sell it anyways as a cheaper model. So if they do want to phase out the original Switch and stop manufacturing that chip, which is the same chip in the Switch Lite, they might find it easier to manufacture just the new chip and then just use defective ones, and probably have a line as well specifically for that type of chip. And it might help them save some money. So
yeah,
conceivably,
maybe
that could be a thing.
Maybe. There's like a couple more chats here, and then we'll actually jump into the name discussion. So, PlayStation Nintendo win added me. How likely do you think Donkey Kong is? Very, 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 very likely. Now, does that mean we see it at E3? I don't know. I just know or believe with great confidence that Donkey Kong is coming to Switch, a new one. Beyond that, all I can say that's likely coming from a team from EPD, maybe the Odyssey team. That's pretty much it. I do kind of expect to see it at E3, but I'm also prepared to not see it. They may say it for a later date. If you just kind of considering the things that are coming out right now, potentially, like they may not need Donkey Kong yet. So I'm trying to keep my expectations a little bit in check here, but I do think it's real. So if it doesn't show up at E3, don't lose heart. I think it's coming. It just, you know, sometimes when we get information about things that are in the works, we don't get it when we want to hear about it, but it's still in the works. So just be patient. I think we will eventually get a reveal for it. PlayStation, Nintendo One had another question here. Do you think we get Age of Calamity DLC out right after the E3 Direct? Yeah, actually.
Probably.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. At least within the week, I could see it sort of being highlighted at a Direct, potentially being shadow drop, meaning drop that day or during the presentation, because it is slated for June, and they're probably going to mention it during the Direct. I think so. But let's jump into the speculation or the debate in terms of what the Switch Pro will actually be called. We're calling it Switch Pro because that's what everyone calls it, but there's other options here. Now, there was a Amazon of Mexico listing saying new Nintendo Switch Pro. Now, that, I believe, was very clearly just a placeholder. They basically took two different common namings for revisions and put them together. Maybe it's called New Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Maybe it's called Nintendo Switch Pro. I really doubt it'll be called both. So those are possibilities. But then also Nate Drake or Nate the Hate, depending on which platform you're looking at here. But on Reset Era, he was saying that he heard a while back Super Nintendo Switch. But that may have been a code name, a name they were using at the time. That doesn't mean it's going to be actually what it's called when it's actually announced and really revealed to the public. But it could be. So that's another name that's sort of been bounced around here. I think it's going to be called Switch Plus. And I could be wrong. That's just my prediction here. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but I kind of want to hear what you guys think in terms of what the name may be.
Do you want to go first, Brandon, or?
Oh, sure. I don't think it will be called the Pro. We already have the PS4 Pro. Seems unlikely that they'll steal that naming. The new 3DS, I feel like that was just confusing at the time. Like, everybody thought that was the horrible name. Like, it kind of worked out in the end, but everybody was like, why? This is literally the worst name. And I don't think anybody's opinions on that changed. Like, it was pretty universally thought of as one of the worst names ever. So that doesn't seem likely. And then Super Switch, I mean, they have used, the Switch Lite's from an earlier model of the DS. It goes way back. So they could pull all the way back from the SNES for inspiration. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be even just something like Switch 4K, but I doubt Nintendo would do something so on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly,
yeah.
I don't know.
For me,
Okay.
my worst fear is the new Nintendo Switch. I just think it's bad branding. It's not a good name. It for any parent out there who's going to be doing like holiday Christmas shopping, it's just like it's confusing, and I don't think it generates excitement. I definitely don't think it's going to be called the Switch Pro. I would absolutely love for it to be called the Super Nintendo Switch. The Super Nintendo is to this day my favorite console of all time. That was the big console that I played when I was really getting into video games as a kid, and it was the one that made me a huge Metroid fan, huge Final Fantasy fan, and Zelda fan. So I love the idea of it being the Super Nintendo Switch. And because of that, they could chain off of it and do the Switch 64, the Switch Cube, the Switch.
Oh man, not that one.
They could do it all.
No, not the Switch.
They could do it all.
Anything but the Switch.
But the two most likely names that I think it could be, I think you guys are onto something with the Switch Plus. I think that's a good name. I think that one makes a lot of sense. And then the other one that I think is very likely is the Switch XL. And I feel like that feels very much in line with traditional Nintendo branding. We know they had the DS, the DS Lite, the DS XL, as well as the 3DS, 3DS Lite, 3DS XL. Well, they did the Switch Lite. The next step, it would make a lot of sense to be the Switch XL, especially if it's using the same body, but it's removing the bevel for the bigger screen. Like that, an XL experience kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great
XL
point.
is interesting. I don't think they'll call it that simply because the XL kind of implies that it's just a bigger screen and that's it. Like the XL branding always meant like it was a bigger screen and that was like literally the only change. So it would be weird for them to call it the XL and then have all these other improvements. I like the name. For that reason, I think it's kind of implies a way less of an improvement there.
Yeah, in to that regard, the Switch Plus would make more sense because it's the Switch plus more. But I mean, also that the new 3DS doesn't imply much other than the fact that it's new. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Nintendo's always very unique with their branding. So
do you guys know why they call it the Wii?
Because we would like to play.
Pretty much.
I don't know.
I think that was pretty much it. Like I remember talking about it with like my dad, and he didn't know. He was just kind of basing it off he was like, his opinion at the time was just your traditional mainstream consumer. And he just thought it meant something related to like wireless or something, right? Which I feel like is not a really kind of a bad guess at the time, because if you look at the jump from GameCube to Wii, wireless motion controllers, it had online connectivity, Connect 24, like there were different things about the Wii when you compare it to the GameCube that were kind of ambitious in terms of like the wireless Wi-Fi sort of perspective. And when you see WII, it kind of makes sense, right? But it had more to do, to your point, more of like we would like to play, like it was more about togetherness and such. Maybe they also thought that maybe some people would sort of interpret the whole wireless thing as well with Wii, but they never really, I don't think they ever mentioned that in any interviews.
Wii's kind of a fun name. It's like Wii, like going down slime.
I'm gonna explode with cringe. But yeah, I think there was an element of that in there too. I do kind of agree with Brandon that if they were to call it XL, like I feel like that it doesn't plot, like from the reports the screen will be bigger, but it's gonna have basically the same size. And if I'm not mistaken, these 3DS XL, the 2DS XL, all the XL systems, they were just, the screen was bigger, but the systems themselves were just straight up bigger, right? So I think if they were to call it XL, it would imply the system itself is bigger. But the system's already pretty big for like a portable system. Like it's pretty big. So I don't think they're gonna make it larger. Although if they call it XL, I would accept that, like bigger screen. So fine. But it's also not like it wouldn't be significantly larger either. So I don't know if XL would be the best name.
Right.
I'm biased because my idea has been Plus, right?
Well, I think Plus is very likely, and I think that's a great name for it. So
there's a few other options though. So like, what if they called it like Switch Advance?
Love it. I love the throwbacks.
Yeah.
To like, especially when it's like to like a beloved Nintendo piece of hardware. That's why I think the Super Nintendo Switch or the Super Switch is so cool. I mean, that was a time that was really groundbreaking for a lot of, obviously their big IPs like Mario, Zelda, and Metroid started on the NES, but they really found themselves on the Super Nintendo, that was kind of the console that really defined those games.
Yeah. But on the note of the Super Nintendo Switch name, like it's very cool. It's very like hardcore, which I think would be very appealing to the people who would want to get that kind of system. So from that perspective, it might go over really, really well. And I could be mistaken in this logic here, but I do feel like Nintendo shouldn't create a naming that kind of puts them into a corner, right? Sure. So like, for example, if they did call it New Nintendo Switch, what do you do for the sequel to the Switch? Do you call it Switch 2? And so then you have New Nintendo Switch and you have Switch 2? Like, I really feel like if there's a time for Nintendo to start adopting like a number system for suggesting their upgrades, it's now. Because I feel like they finally struck a balance where they're like, people know what this is, people like it, it works, you should just run with this train. That's what Sony's been doing for 5 generations, and it's going swimmingly well. So I think Nintendo should probably do the same thing. That's my opinion, right? Nintendo, they'll do all sorts of crazy weird things, right? So you can never be entirely sure with them, but I feel like this would be the best time to bet on them sort of keeping the same naming and just kind of maybe going back to like not going back to, but doing some sort of numbering system. And if they were to call the Switch revision New Nintendo Switch, I feel like they're sort of driving themselves into a corner, because that is very confusing. If you have New Nintendo Switch, then 2 to 3 years from now, they have Nintendo Switch 2. So which one's better, New Nintendo Switch or Switch 2? Of course, a good counter argument could be, look what's happening with Xbox right now. Xbox One S, Xbox One X, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X. I believe when the Xbox Series X was announced, pre-orders, I'm not sure if they were up yet or if they sold out, but Xbox One X boosted in sales dramatically because there is significant confusion about the naming, and people thought that was the new system. So
it even happened with the Wii U, and obviously like people like the listeners of your podcast and people like us who are very informed and stuff, and we're, like, this is what we do, and we're constantly checking out what's going on in the video game world. There are a lot of very casual gamers out there who just aren't reading every day and looking at the gaming news. And I mean, I had friends who played games and played Nintendo, and they thought the Wii U was a peripheral for the Wii. Like, they didn't actually realize it was a brand new console because the branding and the way it was shown was very confusing, So I think the best thing that they can do is not name it the new Nintendo Switch and do something that really screams new without calling it new,
Yeah.
I like the Switch Advance because they did go
Switch Advance
with
is really cool.
With the Switch Lite, it was based off of a, portable machine. So it makes sense to, if they're going to pull an old name, also pull another one of their portable machines instead of like the Super Switch, whereas that was just a home console only. So, although I do love the Super Switch name, it just makes maybe the Advance makes a little more sense.
Advance is a cool one. I like that a lot. I also like the Switch Master. Like, it's the Master Class version of the Switch family. The Switch Master.
Interesting.
Switch Master Plus 4000.
There you go.
Oh god.
Yeah, maybe. Why should they just call it Switch Pro? I mean, even though it'd be copying Sony, like, there are other pieces of hardware, not maybe with gaming, but hardware that's just Pro, right? Like the iPhone 12 Pro, right? So maybe they could do that. I think for the Samsung phones, what is it? It's S21, S21 Plus, S21 Ultra. So,
those names are so confusing. They're so bad.
It is very confusing, but I feel like if you put Plus, people understand what that is. And I think Nintendo just needs to focus on things on clear branding here.
I could call it the Switch Deluxe. They seem to like calling things Deluxe.
They do like Deluxe lately.
Yeah, Deluxe is an option. I don't think it rolls off the tongue as well, but yeah, Deluxe is totally an option, for sure. And it would be entirely, it would tell you what it is. Oh, it's the Deluxe version, so it has a few extra bells and whistles, right? Like, yeah, totally makes sense. That's a possibility. I do want to go back to both Super and Advance, though. So I agree. I feel like Advance makes more sense than Super. They're both super cool because they're throwbacks and all, but they're both also a little misleading if you kind of just examine the history of things, because Super Nintendo was a next generation of the original Nintendo, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the problem with that is that this Switch Pro we're talking about, this revision, is not a next generation in terms of like the next entirely new system up, right? It's a mid-gen refresh. So for those of you who are concerned, because I get these questions in every Switch Pro video that I make, like people are always wondering, oh, am I still going to be able to like get the new games? Like, is Breath of the Wild 2 going to come to base Switch? Yes. It's all the Nintendo games at the very least will all still come to original Switch and Switch Lite. Do not worry. Even if they do call it Super Nintendo Switch, like that's still going to be the case. But to my point, the Super naming suggests a whole new generation based off history. However, that system, the NES came out in the late 80s, or no, the early 80s, and the Super Nintendo came out in 91. That was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago with the Super Nintendo, right? And then with the Advance, that came out 2001, so still a while ago, 20 years ago, but that was also the next generation for the Game Boy. So again, kind of same argument there, it implies next generation. However, if you just look at the word itself, I feel like Advance does kind of tell you basically the same thing as Deluxe or Plus would, right? So I do feel like it would fit, but just the history of them telling you that they were next generations with their initial placements on their systems, I feel like that can mislead people a little bit, but given that it's been decades since those names were used, maybe it doesn't really matter. So that's something to consider there. My argument for Plus, I'll just finish this point, I'll let you go, Brandon. My argument for Plus is, we've talked about many times before, it's just that, well, one, it's a simple thing. It's a very quick sort of, it's similar to Lite, it's a 4-letter word, or if you just use a symbol, it's a symbol. Not to mention the Switch has a symbol, it has a plus symbol on it, so they might even be able to sort of make a play on that. It's indicative of more, but still being that same system. The same way how there are some pieces of hardware that have plus in their names already, like the S21 Plus. You know the S21 Plus is a slightly better version of the S21, but still of that same series, right? So people understand what Plus means, and it's a very clear, crisp name. It's not lame in any way. It's still kind of cool, and it's just clearly understood. So you know, that's what I kind of think. But again, you know, it's just speculation. We don't know. You want to say something, Brandon? Sorry.
Oh yeah,
I cut off Brandon initially.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Switch 4K, maybe it is viable, because like back in the day you had the Game Boy Color, it was just the Game Boy with color, and they just literally just called it that. There's like, this is the Game Boy with color, it's the Game Boy Color. And then like the DSi, it's like the DS, and it has internet, it's the DS internet, it's the DSi. It's like, but maybe they could do that. It's just Switch 4K. It's the Switch, and it has 4K. It's the Switch 4K. It's like, I don't think, like, at first I was kind of like, they probably won't do that. But I'm like, maybe they will. Maybe they could do that. Maybe it would work.
I mean, if they're hard focusing on marketing the 4K capabilities of it, maybe, right?
4K is a big buzzword.
You know, I'm not gonna say it's impossible because Nintendo has had some weird naming standards, but I don't think it exactly helps them to put 4K in the name of the console, especially considering like its competitors have been doing 4K for like a while. Like I think it makes more sense to have that big 4K on the actual packaging. You know, 4K on the go, anywhere you want. Play 4K games, you know, on your TV at home and take the console on the go. I don't know. I think the 4K branding definitely will have a place on the packaging. But if it is called Switch Plus, I hope it's the plus symbol and not the word plus, just because I think it looks a little bit more clean, a little bit more sleek. They could make a unique kind of Nintendo-fied plus symbol as well. And I think that would look really good.
Yeah. I guess we'll find out more this week on that. I do see ASAP Rel added me here. Switch Plus just sounds like Disney Plus. Similar sounds as well. LOL. Yeah. Well, you know, Nintendo and Disney, you know, there are some similarities there, so maybe. But let's transition a little bit here. So, there's been some other things that have come out recently. So, for example, Emily Rogers earlier was doing some speculation on Metroid coming out this year. Basically, her just reiterating that she thinks Metroid is coming out this year, and she has sources. So, yeah, I believe it. We've been talking about Metroid for a while. I think Metroid's coming out this year. And she was speculating somewhere in the August to October range. When you consider that we're getting reports of this Switch in either September or October, I'm thinking that pretty much we're going to see this Metroid game come out in either August or September. And actually, she pointed out a few different things, that we've seen a lot of Metroid games come out in either August or September. Several Metroid games, actually. Let me see here. Let me see if I can pull up the tweet, because I thought it was a really good point, actually. Let's see here. Hopefully it's not too old of a post. I'm not just scrolling forever. It was only a few days ago. Let's see. Maybe it was a while ago. Talked about it in a video not too long ago.
While you're looking for that, I'm gonna be right back.
Sure. We also got the Sonic stuff, right? Sonic Colors Remastered. We were predicting that, and it is real. It is coming, and it is coming September 27th. Yeah. I can't find it. I probably skipped past it already. What if I Control F Metroid? There we go. Control F is my friend. Not enough of my friend, apparently. Huh. I can't find it. Oh well. Anyway, point is, there have been several Metroid games that have come out in either August or September, so it does seem kind of like a good time for that. Like, I do think that kind of makes a lot of sense. Metroid's 35th anniversary also is this August. So timing-wise, it makes a lot of sense for it to come out maybe August. September's still a possibility, though. They don't have to like stick to that actual time. But what's interesting about it to me is that from what we've heard, this is a side-scrolling Metroidvania style Metroid game. So it's not going to be like a big like Metroid Prime 4 kind of game. It's still probably going to be a looker, still probably going to be impressive. But I guess the point I'm making with this, it's not maybe the thing that you expect to be like a showcase or a launch title for the Switch Pro, right? I think more likely Breath of the Wild 2 comes out a little bit after this with the Switch Pro, and it kind of makes sense because historically Nintendo has always used Zelda to push hardware. Wii Motion Plus, Skyward Sword, Nintendo Wii, Twilight Princess, Link's Awakening Remake, the Switch Lite, new Nintendo 3DS, Majora's Mask 3D, the Switch itself, Breath of the Wild. You see the pattern here, right? Nintendo uses Zelda to push hardware, so I feel like Breath of the Wild 2 and the Switch Pro come out a little bit after Metroid here. So if Metroid comes out August or September, then I think this comes out like 6 weeks afterwards or something like that. Timing-wise, I think it makes a lot of sense. Conceivably, I feel like Nintendo could put something else in those months, right? So like maybe we get Metroid in August and we get like a Mario Party game in September or something. Like that's a possibility. It wouldn't surprise me if Nintendo gets out like Mario Party and Metroid first, because those aren't games that you would necessarily want to play in 4K. Like obviously you would if you could, but my point is it's not like the things that will showcase the capabilities of a 4K system as well as like Breath of the Wild 2 or Bayonetta 3, right? So I could kind of see the timing of Metroid be one of those 2 months.
Yeah, I second that. That seems like great timing for a release like that. Like you said, it's around Metroid's anniversary. And I think we're all in agreement. We fully expect to see Metroid at some capacity at this year's E3 with the announcement of a new 2D game.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a really good looking game. Like, I don't want to like undersell this, right? Like it's not Metroid Prime 4.
Right.
But it's going to be a new Metroid game. It's going to look really good, I think. I'm pretty excited. Like, imagine if Samus Returns was made ground up for the Nintendo Switch. How stellar that would have been. It was like the best looking 3DS game. Like, it was a really good looking game.
That was a gorgeous game.
Yeah. I mean, and especially because we were talking about Ori earlier. Like, after just coming off Ori, like, I am excited for Metroidvanias right now. So I'd love to see the originator of the Metroidvania style of gameplay come out this year. It could look amazing. And I think I was speculating with Rob a few weeks ago. You guys know Rob, Rule 2 Review, about the idea that maybe like they do more than just side scrolling. Maybe they play around with a few things. Maybe there is like a mode where you go into first person mode very briefly, right? So they kind of play around with it. It's more like a 2.5D. You don't always see things like that. And it's something they've done before. Look at Metroid Other M, for example. Even in Metroid Samus Returns, there's at least one cutscene where they show the first person visor. So, right. Maybe they put in some of that first person perspective in there to kind of tease Metroid Prime 4 a little bit. I think they can maybe do that. And actually, on the note of Metroid Prime 4, I'm changing my tune a little bit about maybe seeing it at E3 now. Because before I've been thinking that they show off this new side-scrolling Metroid game, right? I think that, initially what I was thinking is that they show off the new side-scrolling Metroid game, but they also make a mention of Prime 4 saying, hey, development's going well. Like, absolutely bare minimum they do that. I don't think they could show off the new Metroid game without at least mentioning Metroid Prime 4. They don't have to show off gameplay, but they at least have to mention it. However, with this Switch Pro situation going on,
that changed a lot. Yeah.
It changes a lot, exactly. Because now there's perhaps more of a reason for Nintendo to showcase the best possible visuals they can. And probably the two best looking Nintendo games that are going to be coming out within the next couple years, Breath of the Wild 2, Metroid Prime 4. So we might finally get a teaser for Metroid Prime 4 at this year's E3. Now, maybe they don't, again, because maybe they want to focus on the side-scrolling Metroid game, but at the same time, like, I feel like it kind of works similar to Skyward Sword, right? Like, some people have argued that maybe we don't get Breath of the Wild 2 news until after Skyward Sword comes out. That way it doesn't take away sales from Skyward Sword. But I think when you consider the possibility here that Skyward's not even a possibility, like I think it's a likelihood, that Skyward Sword is going to give us some perspective and context for the story elements and perhaps some gameplay elements in Breath of the Wild 2, that's actually going to make people want to buy Skyward Sword in preparation for Breath of the Wild 2. So, to my point, going back to Spicy, full circle here, my speculation about the first-person perspectives, maybe that being a gameplay element in a side-scrolling Metroid, it'll all about be sort of teasing and offering more context for Metroid Prime 4 to some extent. Not as much as Skyward Sword, but my point here is that people are still going to want to play that in excitement for the Metroid game. Not to mention, there's no way Prime 4 is coming out this year. Like, I really doubt that. Watch it comes out for like December or something, and like Nintendo just makes me look like an idiot. Like, I'll be fine if that happens. But
we'd all lose our voices at E3, basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna scream if Metroid Prime 4 shows up. I don't care if they confirm for 2023. If they even just show us footage of that game, I'm gonna be stoked. But I guess the ultimate point I'm making here is that I think with the Switch Pro now supposedly getting announced before E3, so Nintendo and third parties can show games like showcasing that, it increases the chances for us to see Prime 4 at E3 this time around. And more than just a, hey, development's going well. But at the very least, I think we're getting that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I just want to put something out into the universe.
Do it.
Real quick. What would be so cool at E3, because we know we're going to be getting, that big Breath of the Wild 2 blowout. And it's been a long time since we've seen it's been a long time since we saw the reveal of Metroid Prime 4, but Breath of the Wild and Metroid Prime 4 shared the entrances at E3 together. It would be so cool if in this year's E3 presentation, not only did we really get that deep dive into the next Zelda game, but somewhere within this E3 Direct presentation, Nintendo they're like, next up, we have an update on a game that you guys have been waiting a long time for. And then it cuts to black. You hear kind of like, you see like the stars coming in, and it's a little teaser, cinematic teaser. And everyone's like, oh my God. And then it says 2022. Like, that would be the dream for me.
Holy crap, Baruzis. Yeah.
Like, if they just had that now really quick, we want to show you a little bit of a game you've been waiting a long time for. And that sets up the speculation. Like, what are they talking about?
It
Mario
has to
Kart?
actually be gameplay, by the way. Because I think the whole point of the Switch Pro situation,
sure,
Switch Plus maybe, Switch Super, I don't know. Whatever it is, like, is that, games look and run really well on this. So if they just show us like a CG trailer, or I think it's got to be gameplay. But of course, the gameplay can still be cinematic, because a lot of Nintendo games, their cutscenes are cinematic and less CGI, so.
Right.
Brian, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
What do you think? Do you think the Switch Pro situation impacts the chances of us seeing Prime 4 at E3?
No, I don't think that game's ready. I just think that game's just too... It just needs too much time for it to really impact anything. I don't think they have enough to show at the moment that they would be like, hey, we were going to show this really early to show it on the Pro. Like, they might not even have a Pro version up and running yet. We have no idea. So I don't think that really changes anything.
An interesting point. I'll counter that they announced the restart of development in 2019. So even though I feel like that means they probably started a couple months beforehand, let's just assume that they actually started January 2019. E3, June 2021 is almost 2.5 years later. I feel like 2.5 years into development should be enough time to give us something.
Yeah. I mean, think about Breath of the Wild 2. We saw an engine.
Sure, and that was, 2.5 years after they started development for that, right?
Right. So, I mean, it's possible. I think it's going to be more along the lines of how, especially given the fact that it had to reset development, how ready Nintendo feels to show this game, or how confident Retro feels to show it, given it already had to restart. When they do show it, they probably don't want this to look rough around the edges in any way. They want this to be kind of a wower.
Not like Legends Arceus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because
I also just real quick, I want to correct myself. I said 2.5 years for Breath of the Wild 2, so that's wrong. So if we're gonna, from interviews, we've been told that they started development around late 2017 when they finished the DLC. So that would be a year and a half after that was when we got the Breath of the Wild 2 teaser. So that's even less time than where we've been waiting for Breath of the Wild for Metroid Prime 4 to get a tease for.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's just gonna come down to like, is there something that's polished enough right now to show? Because I'm sure they're doing great things. It sounds like they've done the studio expansions. They've built a all-star dream team of game developers. I have no fears about how this game's going to turn out, but I know just given the circumstances that they're not going to want to show this with any rough edges. They're going to want to show it when it's going to wow people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
don't think it's far enough along that they would be like, this is what we want. We want to pull this out specifically to show off the Pro. Like, I don't think they're in that position quite yet.
Okay, that's a good point. That makes sense. And I also just had a thought. Like, I wonder if the reason they decided to show off Breath of the Wild 2 at E3 2019 was because they restarted development for Metroid Prime 4. Like, maybe the initial plan in 2019 was to have Metroid Prime 4 be kind of like that really big, super ambitious, hardcore Nintendo game that we could sort of pine over. But since they had to restart development, they had to transition to maybe having something else to sort of be like that thing we sort of look forward to and sort of speculate on, you know what I mean? So maybe they decided to show off that trailer sooner than later. Because, I mean, we really didn't need to get that trailer back at E3 2019. Like, that was a while ago at this point. Like, they could have probably shown off Breath of the Wild 2. They could have given us that teaser trailer last year, and it would have been fine, you know? So, yeah.
They also might not have been expecting it to release this late when they first showed it off.
That
maybe 2020 was their original.
Yeah.
That's also
maybe 2020 was their original release window for that.
Maybe Age of Calamity was supposed to come out like the summer or something and lead up to the sequel.
Yeah.
Potentially. We don't know, but potentially.
Yeah. And we'll probably never know, too.
Maybe not.
Like stuff like that Nintendo's always really quiet about.
Yeah. I got a couple
why
more...
go back and be like, yeah, we had delay. Like, why would you reveal that information?
Yeah, we probably won't know unless like someone on the inside tells us someday. But I got a couple more super chats here, which I want to get to. So another one from Verum Verbi. Thank you very much. They ask, what if they call it Switch U? I will feel like that. I think that would be worse than Switch.
Thank you. But I have to ask you this, because they asked what if they call it the Switch U?
It almost sounds like they're insulting me.
Yeah, the Switch U,
man.
Yeah, Switch Nintendo, not you, Verum. Verum, I'm not accusing you of anything.
The Switch U's a terrible name, but what about the Switcheroo?
Oh god.
Cue the cricket. Cue the crickets.
No.
Fair enough.
I mean,
that's about as good as.
I appreciate your ability to come up with names that give me shivers.
People were saying Super Switch, and I was like, oh yeah, and then next generation can be the Super Duper Switch. That's about as good as that.
Super Duper, that would be great. Yeah, they'll sell a lot, like 3 copies. Taker610
That's
also.
when you order your Switch on Wish.
Yeah, I got another super chat here from Taker610. Thank you. Taker asks, what if we get Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask with 4K mode on Switch Plus? Yeah, like, I don't think that's crazy. Like, granted, there's still gonna be Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask, so, you know, those are N64 games, right? If you take the 3DS versions, and I'm pretty sure Aggressive has like HD versions of those textures, and then use DLSS 2.0 to really kind of boost that up a little bit, like, sure, it'll look really sharp, and it'll look better than what we got on 3DS. It won't look like a modern Zelda game at all, but it'll be nice to have on the Switch. Yeah, I mean, I would love to get those games on there. And they haven't rumored, so we'll see.
Be nice.
Hidden Snew. When will we see Wario World 2 or a Wario World remake? I don't think we're gonna get a Wario World remake anytime soon. But it doesn't mean we can't get a new Wario World at some point. I don't know when that'll be though. I think
we
more
need
likely
to
get a WarioWare. Go on.
Yeah, WarioWare Switch would be awesome.
Yeah, I would love to see WarioWare just for the record.
Phones too.
Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, WarioWare on phones would be very, very, very interesting. That, like, they could do that and then have Wario World, and then maybe that the sales will sort of transition over. Because I would love to see like an actual like sort of platforming Wario game, but Nintendo, I don't know. Like of
When
all
are we gonna get Waluigi World? That's the real question.
Waluigi World, maybe in Waluigi's World.
Man,
yeah,
not that creep.
I'm a big proponent of us eventually getting a Waluigi's taco stand. Like I think there was an IGN podcast where they presented that idea, and I've been all for it ever since. They should definitely do that.
Why a taco stand?
Why not? Taco stands are the best stands. So
I mean, yeah. But it's just random.
Man, you're making me hungry.
You made yourself hungry. You brought up that idea.
Yeah, you're right. I'm getting hungry.
Now you're making me hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's see here. I want to make sure we kind of cover everything. So we've talked about the Bloomberg report. Right. There's something we're missing here. We did talk about Donkey Kong and Metroid a little bit. We talked about Breath of the Wild too. Do you guys agree with me that October really does feel like the time is coming out, assuming Switch Pro is real, which we all think it's real. It's getting announced this week. Or do you feel like there's some room for it to maybe come out at a different time?
I say no later than November, but we're getting Pokemon Diamond and Pearl in November. October seems like late October seems like a prime slot for a game like Breath of the Wild.
Do you think I'm maybe jumping the gun here?
This year, it makes sense.
Yeah, but do you think I'm maybe jumping the gun here and assuming that because Switch Pro is coming out in September or October, that also means Breath of the Wild too?
Well, I think that Switch Pro needs a killer app. I mean, I just feel like if they launch Switch Pro without this huge game that you're gonna want to play it in the best way possible, it's not gonna generate enough excitement. Obviously, the really hardcore Nintendo fan base is gonna want to upgrade because they'll upgrade no matter what. They love Nintendo, but I don't know. Like,
well, let's play the hypothetical, right? Let's say Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't come, right? So you have this 4K Switch system. What does Nintendo come out with that is good to push that hardware? Just look at 2017, just look at 2019, the games that came out during those times. Nintendo absolutely put out a slew of games to push those hardwares, right? And each time, they had a Zelda game to come out the day of that system. Each time. So, still, Breath of the Wild 2 makes the most sense, but hypothetically, let's say it's not there. What does Nintendo do to showcase the system and have, like, that killer app or a series of games to push it? I really don't think it's gonna be Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, which is a chibi-fied remake that has been outsourced and not even being made by Game Freak. Not saying it's not going to be good, not saying I'm not going to buy it. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, but it's not what you use for a 4K system. Exactly. Not to showcase it.
It makes way more sense for Nintendo to at a later time this year, before Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes come out, they announce a special Diamond and Pearl themed Switch Lite.
Yeah.
That makes way more sense than using those two games as a Switch Pro enticement.
Right. Totally agree with that. What if it's the Metroid game? Like, it's supposedly a side-scrolling Metroid game, which, again, I feel like isn't like the game you would do, but it still would look great.
I'm going to disagree on you, because you keep saying that 2D Metroid wouldn't be a showcase for the Switch Pro.
Sure.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
Because
I'm not
we've
offended.
seen some absolutely insane-looking 2D games before.
Okay.
That were actually really technically impressive. I mean, recently we got Abe's Odyssey. That game looks insane. It's a 2D game, but there's all kinds of things going on. There's so much detail packed into that world. You can see very far into. You can see like new other parts of the level off in the distance. There's a really impressive game, and I think that a 2D Metroid game could be very impressive. Sure, it's a side-scrolling game, but it's got 3D environments.
Sure,
it very may well, in some cases, look better than Prime 4, because Prime 4 has to have a big, open 3D it's a lot more demanding. So they might even push better graphics in some ways on this 2D game than their big 3D game.
So I'm with you there.
I kind of contradict you saying that it won't be a showcase. It might very well be a very big showcase.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with your disagreeing of my point. Like, I think you're making perfect sense. Like, I've always thought this is going to be an incredibly, it's going to be a really good looking game. Like, I absolutely believe that. And I think in 4K, it's going to make it look all the more better. But my counter argument to your counter argument is that while it would be that, at the end of the day, right, like, is that going to be the sole game that will push hardware, that will be a killer app for this system, and it'll be like, oh, you see this awesome side-scrolling Metroidvania, look how amazing it is, we can play it in 4K. Like, do you think that's the game that Nintendo's going to rely on to push the hardware here? I'm going to say no.
I don't think it has to be just one game.
Right, yes. But what the point I'm getting at, I could see it being complementary to it and helping to support the system, sure, but there's got to be something else at its core that does it. I don't think this Metroid game does it on its own. I think it's going to be a nice game that comes out this year, and I think a lot of people are going to want to play it in 4K, but I just don't see it being the game that pushes it. And maybe to your point that there isn't a game, but there's going to have to be more than just Metroid and a Pokemon remake to do it.
It could be a couple releases for all we know. But for me, like, I definitely, like, I agree with you, Brandon. I think Metroid can do it. I think it has potential to be just like this beautiful, really cool and unique Metroidvania style too, like, just really springing life.
Gorgeous.
2D Metroids. But the two things that come to mind for me, just like off the top of my head, if it's not Zelda, and again, I believe it's Zelda personally, this is just what if, I think of whatever Monolith Soft has next, whether it's a new IP from them or Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Monolith Soft has gotten a lot more popular and a lot bigger. Xenoblade as a series has gotten a lot more popular, especially with the release of Pyra and Mythra and Smash Brothers. I mean, there was a lot of disappointment around that announcement, and then once she got dropped in, she's one of the most loved characters in the game right now. So I think there is a great opportunity for a company who not only makes some of the best RPGs out there right now, but one that's also helped design open world with the Zelda team on Breath of the Wild and working on Breath of the Wild 2. It's a team that has potential to put out something really beautiful and special that can generate a lot of hype. Maybe it's RPG, maybe it's an open world adventure.
Maybe it's both.
Yeah, maybe it's both.
Maybe it's an MMO.
And then the other one, if it's not the Monolith Soft game, the other one that I could see being big hype is, and this is kind of with a caveat, is the new Donkey Kong game.
Yeah. And
the caveat is, which I don't think it will be just like a Donkey Kong Country Returns or a Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I mean, obviously leaks suggest they're going to be kind of leaving that Returns branding because they want to, separate themselves from the previous games. But if it is more of a 3D adventure designed by the Mario Odyssey team, maybe something a little more ambitious for Donkey Kong, unlike something we've seen since Donkey Kong 64, or even if it's that kind of like mix, that 2.5D with some really cool, unique mechanics that we've never seen in a Donkey Kong game before, that really utilizes the hardware and is beautiful, maybe explores some 3D elements. I think that could be something that generates enough hype to get people on board with the Switch, especially because you just think of the caliber of talent with the Odyssey team, what they did with a 3D Mario that game's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'll give you that. I actually feel like of the a game from Monosoft would be amazing. Like a Bayonetta 3 would be amazing. A new Metroid, Side-Scrolling Metroid, all of those games will look amazing on the system. People are going to want it. There'll be great complementary pieces here. But if you just look at the sales histories of these games, obviously we don't know what Microsoft is going to be. It's going to be a new IP, presumably, right? But just the sales history of their franchises, they'll sell a couple million. But I think you need something that's guaranteed to sell more than 1 to 2 million copies. So that does kind of lead me towards Zelda, obviously, right? But again, it's hypothetical. We're assuming that Zelda's not there, right? I think Donkey Kong is actually pretty good because Donkey Kong actually has a much better sales history than those other franchises. I could see that one kind of maybe being it. Absolutely. Or a Mario game. That would work. But I don't think a 3D Mario's coming out this year. We just got Bowser's Fury. No. So no. So not that. Another option is a new Mario Kart. Even though it's not like a realistic game, it still could be a really good looking game that's going to be a huge seller, and a lot of people might jump on that. I think that's one option for sure. That's definitely a possibility. But ultimately, kind of talking about these options, maybe there's something I'm sort of missing here. But I just feel like when you look at the option Nintendo has in terms of pushing hardware, Zelda's usually the one that makes the most sense. That's what they've used historically speaking. So, I kind of still have to side with Breath of the Wild 2. But again, if Breath of the Wild 2 is not ready, I could see them positioning something else like a Mario Kart game. Maybe it's just they're not in that situation now where they really just have to rely on a number of things, right? Maybe they have Donkey Kong come out in October. Yeah. Maybe they have a Mario Kart come out in like December or something. Like that's maybe one way they go about doing it, and that would be great. I'd be fine with that. But still, Breath of the Wild 2 I think is the best option.
I think the smart move, and I think it's safe to say that they will have some sort of killer app for the Switch Pro. But let's just say that they don't have. Like, there isn't that one seller game. I could also see them having 2 SKUs for it, like the regular SKU and then maybe a bundle. And they put in, a game that they know is a seller that says, comes with so-and-so game enhanced in 4K for Switch Pro. One of the games that has been updated to really take advantage of the new hardware. That's another possible.
Really good point, actually, because, let's go back to last holiday. What did both Sony and Microsoft sort of rely on, right? Like, just a lot of enhanced games from the prior generation. And that was sort of what carried people over to make people want to do it. Like, they may just rely on that, just this Switch Pro enhancing games that already exist. That could be their sort of launch lineup for it. That is a possibility as well. Like maybe that's what's going on here.
I think the Switch is at a point where it doesn't need a killer app to sell new hardware. It just kind of sells. If you look at like 2020, it didn't even really need games to sell. It just sold anyways.
Yeah, because of that pre-existing lineup of evergreen titles.
Yeah, and if they have a bunch of enhanced titles that like older titles like Breath of the Wild works in 4K on day one. I'm assuming any Unreal Engine 4 game will probably get an update considering that's baked into the Unreal Engine 4 engine. So they can literally just like flip a switch and then it works. So I assume like any Unreal Engine 4 games will see that. And then, rely on third parties and games that you have. There's also the possibility that a game comes out that we don't know about that could be really big.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Nintendo is full of surprises, and that's kind of the cool thing about them as a company too. Because even sometimes when we get leaks for stuff, they still manage to surprise us in unique ways. I always think of like all those leaks that happened with like the Mario Rabbids, and there was that PowerPoint, and everyone was like, "Oh no, this like who wants this? This sounds awful." And then that first trailer dropped, and everyone was like, "Wow, that actually looks like a really cool game."
I think we're getting a sequel, by the way.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So I actually want to transition, guys, to some features the Switch Pro may have. So basically, there is this Spanish news site called Vandal, who's getting information from a Chinese accessory maker, and they've gotten things right in the past. There's some precedents here for the reports about different features the Switch Pro may have. So one of them is that, as just sort of reiterating what we've heard before, a new OLED screen that'll be about 7 inches, and basically they'll just be like no bezel. It'll be about the same size. But also that there will be, instead of the little kickstand on the Switch, right? You guys know this little thing right here? Not this, but
piece of crap.
Yeah, but instead it'll be like it'll be kind of like a whole flat panel that comes out, similar to the Microsoft Surface Pro. I'll just show you this image here from Nintendo Life that kind of showcases exactly what I'm talking about, because that's their article. That right there, just a whole flat that runs across it, which would probably do a lot better of a job than the little flimsy kickstand we have now for the Switch. So that's also part of this report here. And then also apparently it'll have 2 USB 3.0 ports, as opposed to, I think technically the Switch now, they're like technically capable of being 3.0, but they run in 2.0, right, Brandon?
The one on the inside of the Switch is a 3.0.
Okay.
But the ones on the outside are 2.0.
Okay, so this one will come with actual 3.0 USBs, and it'll also come with an Ethernet port, which would be great because you can use a dongle to kind of attach an Ethernet port to the Switch dock, but bottlenecked. It pretty much just it may give you a more stable connection, but the connection speed will be basically just the optimal Wi-Fi speed. That's it. Yep. You don't get much better than that.
Trying to download Knockout City yesterday in like 30 minutes. If I had like an Ethernet, it would have taken like 2 minutes.
If there was
not even exaggerating, it would have been like 2 minutes.
Yeah, so with an Ethernet port, you can get far faster connections, which would be great, especially, and it would make sense for people who are the gaming enthusiasts, right?
Or anybody who has downloaded anything.
Yeah.
That it's such a simple thing to add that just makes so much sense. For a lot of people, the Switch is like, I still personally buy physical games. I like collecting, so I buy a lot of physical stuff. But for a lot of people, the Switch is all digital, or at least mostly digital. That way they always have every game on their Switch wherever they go. So if you're one of those people and you're downloading games all the time, like, man, you're going to save a lot of time just having that Ethernet port. Just being able to plug in and do that is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing the article brings up is that the dock may be a little thicker, and will have the ability to output in 4K. So yeah, it's kind of supporting the notion of maybe that this dock might have a little bit more to it in terms of the innards. Maybe that's where the DLSS 2.0 technology comes in. Maybe, I don't know. Just that part's speculation. But yes, that's pretty much the rumor here. So we got a nice little Surface Pro style little flap instead of a kickstand, USB 3.0 ports, an Ethernet connection, 4K capabilities, 7-inch OLED screen with no bezel, basically same size Switch, but the dock itself might be a little bit thicker. So those are kind of like a little bit of information about potential features there. And it sounds like a Switch Plus to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are all really enticing features. They all scream a more premium package than what we currently have. I mean, just that stand, like showing that example of the stand, the one is so flimsy on the Switch, just that will make the hardware look more premium, you know? But yeah, that all sounds great to me. Of course, there's like a little things here and there that I'd love to see, but if that's everything, I think that is a great value, and I'm all in on it.
So assuming it's like DLSS 2.0, so basically that means like the games, it's not just an upscaler, like it uses actual artificial intelligence to basically get you imagery that is as if the game was made for 4K, almost, pretty much, right? In some cases, it's almost better depending on the circumstance, right, Brandon? So if it actually does that, if it gives you a better Ethernet, if it gives you USB 3.0, if it has a better flap, if it has a bigger, better screen, does that feel like a $400 system to you, or do you feel like that's still $350?
I mean, I'd be willing to pay $400, but just wondering I don't know how the general public would feel about that.
Now, let's add a couple more things here. let's say it's more than just a DLSS 2.0. It also just has straight up better hardware. So some games just run better. They have a performance boost. So like there are like perhaps 60 FPS patches for a lot of older games, right? It has the ability to run Breath of the Wild 2 at 60 frames per second. On base Switch, it'll be 30 frames per second. Like, what if it offers that on top of the 4K capabilities and then everything else? And there's actually a rumor going around that it'll offer like Bluetooth technology as well, like for like a Bluetooth headset. You'll be able to actually use this on the Switch Pro.
That would be enough.
Like if it has all that, is it then worth $400? Like, Brian, I know you said you would buy it either way for $400, but I just mean in terms of the masses, do you think it performs well at $400 with all of that as part of the package?
I honestly don't know.
It's enticing though, right?
It is enticing. I'd be hyped as hell.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like if they made like
better battery would get me excited. If they touted better battery in the base Switch by, I don't know, at least a few hours, I'd be very excited for that.
There are more like superficial features that would excite me
Pro-cons?
a lot for it. Obviously, I've mentioned that a bajillion times on your channel. Like stuff like Pro-cons or an updated HD Rumble. I think about what Sony's done with DualSense, and I'm like, man, Sony took HD Rumble and just improved on it a little bit. Like Nintendo, you can step it up because this is really cool technology that you threw in your little hybrid console, and I think it has a lot of potential to really pull you in to that immersion and stuff. I think a bit about games like Metroid Prime 4 and like walking under a waterfall and feeling like the water hit the controller.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd love to see them do stuff like that, but like also stuff like themes. Like I think it would be so rad if themes were a feature of the Switch Pro.
I think the problem with that is that people will be pissed for the base Switch. There would be a lot of controversy there.
But I know the thing is I don't have a source for this, but I swear I read an interview talking about like reasons why the Switch OS is so quick and so snappy, at least when you're not in the eShop. But it's because it's so simple and straightforward. It's barely using any memory to run.
Right.
I feel like that's definitely a reason why we don't have music and themes and like graphics going by.
Yeah, the focus was snappiness, absolutely.
Yes. But with more powerful hardware, maybe they could feel like, hey, we can put in themes and we feel like it's not going to compromise the OS because, the system will handle it.
But I guess with themes, like, if you just offer more than 2 colors, like, I'm not even talking about, like, how much harder is it to run a white background versus a red background? Oh no, red's too powerful. I can't handle it.
The red's too powerful.
To lower the frame rate too much.
It's awful that it says themes too. For like it should
it's such a tease.
It's just a background or something.
Yeah, the sad thing is that we are approaching 5 years, right? Like this March is going to be 5 years, so it's going to be 5 years of having 2 themes.
They should have called it dark mode and light mode.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't do that like everybody else.
You could fix it. They could just update the system to say light and dark as opposed to themes. Like
having the word themes there is just a never-ending taunt.
Slap in the face.
Themes. And they were so cool on the 3DS. You know?
At this point, I think we're definitely past the point of them thinking, oh, we'll get around to it. Like, they may still get around to it, but it's like, you don't do it, like, the Wii U didn't even last this long. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I think we've reached a point where themes are, if they're happening, they're only happening because Nintendo decided to add them for Switch Pro and they didn't want people to be really angry, so they added them for base Switch as well.
Yeah.
Going back to the price thing and whether the general public care about it, I'm trying to think like features that the public would be willing to pay more for. I think Ethernet port's probably not one of them. I don't think most people would care. Most people don't use Ethernet cables. Most people are too far away from their routers, or they don't want to string a cable, or they don't have some good way of actually doing that, so they wouldn't do it anyways. And I'm trying to think of other things.
Better
people
Bluetooth and better
actually
Wi-Fi
want.
would probably.
Those would be killer features.
Better battery, yeah. Bigger screen OLED with no bevel. That's fantastic.
That's
The
what I
OLED
care about.
Like, if we're really getting a 7-inch OLED, it's gonna look leagues better than what we
Yeah, I
have
think
now.
sometimes people have been
Oh, yeah.
disappointed because they hear the resolution will be at 720p. They're like, oh, well, it's the same thing. Well, this is stupid. Except the thing is, there's more to image quality than just resolution. The colors, the contrast, the brightness, all of that will, I think, stand out a lot more on OLED screen, regardless of the resolution. If you take pixel density into account, on a screen like that, at that size, at that distance, 720p is still a fine resolution. So I think the games are gonna look
Most
better in
games don't
handheld
even
mode.
hit 720p anyways, so
Oh,
just
another good
having
point.
games actually hit 720p would be fantastic. Because games that do hit 720p on the Switch look great on that screen. There's just like 2 of them.
Yeah,
All 2 games.
yeah, and people forget that. And the other thing is like, I mean, was there any mention? I can't recall, just because there's been so many of these Bloomberg reports at this point. Is there any mention about frame rate in portable? Is it still 720 30 frames, or was there 720 60 frames for portable in the Switch Pro?
Portable has 60.
I think regardless, it could be 60 frames per second, even on current Switch.
The point I'm making is that because like you said, Brandon, there's only like a small handful of games that are running at 720 in portable. If consistently most games are running at 720p 60 frames per second in handheld mode on a 7-inch OLED screen, that's a massive improvement.
Oh yeah,
Although-
like what if there's like a Breath of the Wild update, right? Original Breath of the Wild update, and like, hey, look, we are adding a 60 frame per second update to Breath of the Wild. And they show it during the Switch first look overview trailer. Like, they give us examples of updated games, and like, hey, look, we're updating Breath of the Wild. You can play through the game now, 60 frames per second, 720p in handheld mode, 4K 60 frames per second in docked mode. Like, to your point, that would be amazing. That'd be a really good selling point for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yep. And that was a game that, like, even though it had some frame issues, already looked gorgeous. I mean, take a game like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is it's a beautiful game, but in handheld mode, it really showed some flaws. And so imagine having that boosted up to 720p 60 frames per second and just like playing this huge open world RPG in handheld mode.
The Xenoblade games need better resolution. Those games are so beautiful. Like, imagine if they could get those games running in actual proper 4K. Like, oh my goodness, they will look. I mean, they already look great, but like, what holds them back is the resolution, both docked and handheld mode. But yeah, to your point, handheld mode, they've been really bad. Like, you can see, like, it's super grainy. Yeah,
it's all like pixely.
Yeah, so those updates would be insane. And actually, I've been saving my New Game Plus for Xenoblade 2 for a while. I've been thinking about going back to it. If they offer this update, like, it'll be the time. I'll probably wait a couple more months to start up my New Game Plus for Xenoblade 2 just so I can play through the game at better resolutions. That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Aiden's new 4K update to Luigi's Mansion 3. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a gorgeous game. That's another one of those Nintendo games where you play it and you're like, man, like, they're using not as powerful hardware, but man, do they know how to make good-looking games.
Yeah.
I'm
just gonna point out, guys, we're gonna be closing out the discussion soon, so I gotta run a store in the morning apparently. So we'll be staying up as late this time. So just put out your final questions or points you want to get to, and we'll get to them. I see here in the Nishant added me and said, I joined late because of Among Us Night, but I hope Breath of the Wild 2 comes out on your birthday. Thank you. Me too. So we'll see. But is there any final points you guys want to sort of bring up or talk about before we check with the chat and close things out? I mean, I feel like there was definitely a lot to talk about this week.
Yeah.
But I feel like we kind of touched on most of it, right? Like, Brandon, when you went away, we mentioned Sonic Colors Remastered was confirmed, right? We were predicting that was coming out this year for sure. It's coming out September, so we touched on that. There is a new Sonic game coming, which is cool. It's coming out 2022. We don't know much about it, but it's coming.
Allegedly, it's called Sonic Rangers. That's what the
Allegedly.
Yeah,
There's some data mine suggests that. Yeah. I think there was also like a press release that also had that in the name too.
Right.
So it definitely might be called that. It could be it's keep in mind there's information before the game's finally fully revealed and coming out, so that name could change. I do think it's likely the real thing. Just will that be the final name when it comes out? I don't know.
Hope we see it at E3 this year, because I was hoping we'd get a little glimpse at what kind of a Sonic game it was.
I don't think
Sega's
we will.
going to E3.
Oh, are they not? Are they not on the list of confirmed?
I think so.
They gave us a Sonic Anniversary presentation direct. It's like that's kind of like.
Did they mention that there was another one of those coming out? I feel like
I don't
they
know.
were saying the first Sonic, like implying that it's one of more to come. I feel like they said something like "Welcome to our first Sonic," something. I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't actually watch the presentation.
I kind of sped through it. They're gonna have some Sonic shows. Sonic Colors Remastered was the highlight for me, and the new Sonic game. So.
Yeah, I think the three big things were
there is a Sonic collection they're working on too, though, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's one with like Sonic, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic CD.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool. Sonic Colors Remastered, obviously, like a lot of the 3D Sonic games don't exactly have the best critical reception.
But
that
Sonic
was actually
Colors, it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, that's actually one of the highest rated 3D Sonic games. I never got around to playing that one, so I'm actually
you're in for a treat, my friend.
I've
Sonic
never
Colors
played
is
any
great.
Sonic games.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing it. And then I'm always going to be excited about a new Sonic game, but the Sonic team does let me down many times. So, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
It is interesting to see Sonic Remastered on a Switch Pro, because it will basically be like the exact same game as the Series X and PC versions and stuff.
Yeah, it'll probably just be a regular port.
It'll be like the same. So that'll be like one game where it's like you might as well buy it on Switch because it's the same game docked and you can play it portably.
Yeah. So there's a few chats here. Unless there's anything else you want to say to this, speak to this.
No.
So I'm gonna get to the chat now before we close things out. So, Grupo Media, etc. Do you expect more ergonomic or redesigned Joy-Cons for Switch Pro? I think they're at least going to be a little bit more ergonomic. I don't.
I honestly don't expect them to
I'm not
change
sure.
at all.
Yeah,
I think they
you
want
could be right.
the controllers to work across both.
But
so I think they'll just be the same.
Technically, even if they change them, they could still work across both platforms because, well, at least according to these reports, it's using the same body. So theoretically, as long as it has the same rail, and they're the same, the rail is the same size, you could technically slide on your new Joy-Cons onto your old Switch. Technically.
I feel like there's a good chance that they are a little different, but I think they'll be very subtle.
Sure. And that's fair. I just get rid of the drift, please. This is manufacturing a brand new version of the console. If they don't do it now, it's just I guess drift is just part of Switch history.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of controllers drift, to be fair. I have two PS4 controllers, one drifts, and then I bought a new one, and within weeks, the second one was drifting too. So it's not a lot, it's fine, but, it's a thing. So, and the PS4's been out for a lot longer, and, I bought a big new controller, a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. So drift is a thing regardless across the board, but it's been a widespread.
Way more common on Nintendo's Switch though.
I'm speaking purely from my perspective, right? I have drift on both systems I use with regularity. So, but drift is definitely real, for sure. I had to change both of my Joy-Cons sticks out. I fixed them myself. But
I
it was.
haven't
yeah.
even I haven't used my Switch in handheld mode it for a while because my drift is so bad at. I'm like scared to operate on my Joy-Cons, but
I've
I've been
literally never
Mm.
used these Joy-Cons. I bought a Animal Crossing version of Switch, and I've never used them one time. I've never taken it out of the dock.
You don't play portable mode, do you?
No, literally never.
portable mode, but I got one of those. I forget what it's called. It's like 3D printed, and you could slide your Switch into it,
Yeah.
and then you could Pro controller. So that's how I actually play in portable mode with my Pro controller.
Nice.
It was like $30, but it's like fantastic investment.
I very rarely take my Joy-Cons out. I do play both portable mode and docked mode. I don't know if it's equal, but I play a lot for both, so like both are important to me. I definitely prefer always using my Pro controller, but the only times I use my Joy-Cons is if my Pro controller dies. I'm like, oh, they're dead. All right, trying to pull out the Joy-Con grip, and it works fine. Games play great on that still, so it's fine. Or if I'm playing like multiplayer with someone on the same system, and that's all we got. I will never play Smash with I would not play Smash with this and the Joy-Cons though. I don't want to destroy my Joy-Con sticks again because Smash is intense. And also I feel like the size of the sticks isn't really good for playing Smash. But Mario Kart, other party games, yeah, I think it's fine. But
I guess they could make the Joy-Cons like thicker and maybe have better rumble in them that way. Maybe take out the air sensor since it doesn't use it for like anything.
You won't be able to play 1-2 Switch though. Or you won't be able to use it for Nintendo Labo either.
True. Okay, maybe not take that out, but they might make it thicker so that you can have better rumble, maybe better battery life on them, which even though they're already great. Maybe have a spot for you to actually be able to plug in headphones or something for when you're just using them for like your TV. Though I just don't think there's anything they really like. None of those features seem like features that are really that important. It's like
no,
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't need them, but you know.
Yeah, I don't
they're
think
already
they're
expensive controllers.
I don't think they're that important, but I think like as we were talking about earlier, what if the Switch Plus is $400? Like I think, and if this is a $400,
if it's $400, I want them to put a pro controller inside the box.
Yeah, it's just like any extra bells and whistles are gonna make the difference. You know.
It'd be interesting. What if the Switch Pro doesn't have Joy-Cons that come out? Like it's kind of like a Switch Lite, and it comes bundled with a Pro controller. So if you want, you still can buy Joy-Cons, and they still work with it. But
see, my only problem with that is, and it was one of my problems with the Switch Lite, was that if they don't redesign the analog stick that they're using,
let's just assume if they do this, the analog sticks do not drift.
Okay, then I'm cool with that. But if that's not something that gets remedied, it's a bummer because it's like if you get severe drift, it's like that's your console that you have to send in rather than just a Joy-Con, Yeah.
The reason I like this idea is because it actually, by doing this, it kind of still leaves value for the base Switch. Because if you want to get that experience of being able to pull out the Joy-Cons, having co-op right out of the box, the base Switch still offers that, right? So it kind of gives it some uniqueness there, as opposed to the Switch Pro, which would just completely outclass if it had that option. But at the same time, you could also argue, well, it's supposed to be like a deluxe version. If it doesn't have all the features of the base version, what the flip? So, maybe they would still have it. I would bet it still is going to have detachable Joy-Cons, but I'm just sort of suggesting a possibility here. But I want to continue on because there's other questions in the chat. And Cameron, I know you can't go on for much longer, right? So we'll just sort of wrap things up. Yeah. How much time do you have, by the way? I don't want to keep you for too long.
I could do 20 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's
cool.
More than I expected. So all right. So Khaled Maki added me. Breath of the Wild 2 will overshadow Pokemon Arceus, but Pokemon Arceus won't overshadow Zelda. So Breath of the Wild 2 is most likely October and November this year. What do you think? An interesting perspective. I think... I mean, I see what you mean. Like, I think people could conceivably, like, not want to play Legends Arceus because they want to save their money for Breath of the Wild 2. Now, I know some of you argue, oh, Pokemon's way very different from Zelda. It is. However, Legends Arceus is kind of going for that Zelda feel. It's a single-player experience, apparently, and it's more of an adventure, right? So a lot of people who are thinking about jumping to Legends Arceus who aren't big Pokemon fans are a lot of people who are big Zelda fans. So, you know, there's an opportunity here for a lot of Zelda fans who are non-Pokemon players to jump in with Legends Arceus. So if there's a Breath of the Wild 2 coming out like right after, maybe I could see the argument there. But I think if the games are divided by 2 months, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
I think ultimately it doesn't really make a big.
They're not going to be back to back.
Yeah, and I do agree that Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out either October, maybe still November, still possible. But based off the Bloomberg report, I'm thinking September or October. October seems like the best bet for me. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking, but not because of Legends Arceus necessarily. So that's my perspective on that. PlayStation Nintendo win. Was Vita OLED screen? I didn't think it was, so why would it get burned it?
The Vita, the original Vita was an OLED, but they changed it to lower the price.
I guess OLEDs do suffer from burn-in potentially, right? Like maybe that could be an
Only
issue with Switch
old
Pro.
OLEDs, like new OLEDs, don't do that anymore.
It's
It's
not much of an
really
issue anymore. Yeah, I'd be really upset if I had a Switch Pro and it got burned in the first year.
Yeah, burn-in would, like, I'll take analog drift over burn-in any day.
Actually, it makes me think maybe I should have traded my Switch. I should just keep it as a backup.
I don't foresee it as an issue.
Maybe. But also, when I got my Switch, day one, dock wasn't working. Getting day one systems is always a little bit of a risk, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but burn-in's more due to how the technology works rather than whether it's functional or not.
Well, I'm glad you're telling me that. Now I don't have to worry about it. Maybe. Probably.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's not a mistake Nintendo would make. Granted, they've made certain mistakes in the past.
We've been talking the last 20 minutes about Joy-Con drift.
Oh, I know. It's a very subtle mistake. Whereas, like, you know, they're like, not that they've ever used an OLED screen on any of their devices.
I think burn-in on the screen would be a far bigger issue than my Joy-Cons drifting. Yeah.
Did Game Boy have a little bit of burn-in? I feel like they learned.
I mean, you could get like the occasional dead pixel, but one pixel being dead is like not that big a deal. Even two, right. Like if you notice it, you're like, oh god, it's there. But like if you get into the flow of playing the game, you for the most part don't notice. But when you see that that white screen on the Nintendo DS, you're like, oh, I see it. That is heart-wrenching.
I think I have 1 or 2 dead pixels on my Switch. Maybe
really?
Oh, stop! This is gonna have nightmares.
I've never had a screen that has that dead.
You're getting heart palpitations. I see your shirt going like this.
I'm uncomfortable, man. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Oh, by the way, I got a new Switch name as well.
Oh, okay. This is it, isn't it? This is it.
The Switch Supreme, and if you pre-order it, you get sour cream and hot sauce.
Okay.
I was gonna ask you, do I get sour cream with that? Or it has
like a red Supreme logo on the front, and it costs $600 instead of $350 or $400, just because.
Dude, that would be awesome. It's the Supreme model. It's far superior to the previous model, and you get some sour cream. Like, it's a win-win.
I don't like sour cream. It's gross.
Okay, no sour cream then. Forget the sour cream.
I'll take the version with no sour cream that's cheaper, please.
Well, I'll probably eat it. You're just getting me hungry, man. Yeah. Moving on here. Joshua Ayers. Hey, buddy. Andres, real quick. Any thoughts on both Donkey Kong and Metroid coming out in a 2-month window of August and September? It's one of those things where, like, yes, it's possible. Yes, it makes sense. but it's also like that just seems too good to be true.
I think if they're both 2D, if they both end up being 2D games, then
Yeah.
they might want to space them out a bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think they could be very different styles of gameplay. Even though if they're side scrollers, like it really there's a lot you can do. There's other games that are rumored, by the way, to come out this year, like a Fire Emblem remake, for example. Like conceivably we can maybe get that in September, right?
Really cool.
Maybe we get the Donkey Kong game in December, or maybe the Donkey Kong game doesn't come out this year. You know, that's why, like, you know, of all the rumor games we sort of talked about, we've talked about Donkey Kong. While I do believe it's real, I do think there's a plan for it. I'm not committed to it showing up at E3, nor am I committed to it coming out this year. I really wanted to, because I really want a new Donkey Kong game. Like, I really, really do. But I could see it maybe coming out a little bit later. Maybe it's like a summer game, you know? Announcing...
Maybe you see it in the September Direct.
Right, yeah, we could conceivably see it in the September Direct. Now, they can still show it off at E3, you know, and it still comes out like summer. Like, that's totally possible, right? Maybe even it's like a holiday game next year. Like, we don't know how far along this is. So we'll see. My impression is that we will see at E3 though. If I'm gonna place a bet, I do think we'll see Donkey Kong at E3. Don't hold me to it. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but regardless, I absolutely believe it's real. It's just really a matter of when.
Do you think Donkey Kong could be the March game, and Splatoon really is a summer title? Maybe Splatoon is a bigger game than we're expecting. Maybe it has a more expansive single player mode. It has more multiplayer mode.
Stop it! You're getting me excited.
I think it is that, and it's going on March.
I don't know. Like that.
The thing about Splatoon is that it can come out and have continual updates. Like the game could start off bare bones, and get continual updates. So like,
right.
You know, like Splatoon 2, like Splatoon 1, or like Monster Hunter Rise, right? Like they can do that and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. And also the thing is, while Donkey Kong, I believe, has strong sales potential, it's also been a long time since Donkey Kong has been like a really big seller. Splatoon 3, I think, is like a guaranteed 5 million, maybe even 10 plus million. So like that, I think, kind of makes more sense as like the fiscal year ending game.
You're no, I think you're totally right. I think
I did think about it as a possibility though, right? Like I'm not trying to poo-poo on your idea. Like I also considered it. I almost brought it up as a possibility.
The only thing that makes me wonder is like we're still like, I mean, I think most people who believe that Donkey Kong is coming are kind of in that mindset that this is going to be a new 2D. But at this point, you know, there's a lot of speculation. We can't rule out the possibility that there is a 3D Donkey Kong being developed by the Odyssey team. And I think if that's the case, if it's not a very traditional Donkey Kong game and it is something more new and exciting, using those characters in that universe,
maybe it is a March game, right? Like, yeah.
I think that gives it potential. You know?
For sure. And actually, I mean, I still could see it, regardless of what it is, I could still see it being a holiday game, right? Here's the other thing, like, we're talking about games like per month, but it isn't necessarily going to be per month. It could be like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, we get another major Nintendo published game. If you look at 2019, it's exactly how it was. So don't be surprised if this time around as well is similar. Not to mention, there's a lot of cool third-party stuff coming too, right? We got Shin Megami Tensei 5, Sonic Colors Remastered is coming out September 27th. I believe Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle a sequel is maybe coming out soon. And then there's also No More Heroes 3, for example. And we're probably going to get more Monster Hunter 3. Maybe Bayonetta 3. So
I think the Doom Eternals DLC
so much stuff coming.
Yeah,
I think the Doom Eternals DLC is coming out later on the Switch than the other consoles, so
that
there might be a 4K update to that game too.
Good point.
With the DLC.
Really good point. So yeah, what'd you say, Cameron?
It's crazy for so many people. It's felt like there's been a lot of lulls in like Nintendo releases, but we have gotten a lot of really good titles over the last year and a half. But the crazy thing is that it's like there's so much on the horizon that once it gets into gear, it's just going to be like just game after game trickling out.
Yeah.
And a little bit of something for everyone too, you know, which
I'm
is
glad
really cool.
Sonic Colors Remastered is $40.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I really want it. It was one of my favorite games on Wii. It's one of my favorite Sonic games. But there's gonna be a lot of games to buy this year. I'm gonna have to be smart with my money, I guess. Let's see here. Just kind of continuing on the chat. But actually, just to get back to Joshua's point, it's not out of the question that the Donkey Kong game comes out in September and Metroid in August. But there's just a lot of possibilities. There's just so many possibilities. I guess it was the real point we're sort of getting at here. But I think I'll be totally frank with you. Like, I love the idea of between August and March there being a new Metroid game, a new Donkey Kong game, Breath of the Wild 2, Legends Arceus, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and Splatoon 3. Like, when you were talking about, oh, what if the game has a bigger adventure and there's more, I was like, oh god, like, you're getting really excited for this. Like, I am really excited for this.
Like that. I mean, it looks like the intro to the game will be some kind of story sequence instead of just you making your character and then going into the
a bit more explorative. Yeah, it does.
Very interesting way to introduce that game, and it really it conveyed a sense of scope that we've never seen in Splatoon.
Yeah, usually the single player is like just these abstract floating island places, but this seemed like an actual like environment.
True.
Yeah.
Very interesting point. So there could be a lot more to this, and also the salmon sort of follows you around. So I wonder what the mechanic is with that, if there is a mechanic, which also makes me think maybe they're going to expand upon the horde mode as well. And I love horde mode, so I'm excited for Splatoon 3. Like, I really want to learn more about this game. Moving on with the chat here. Let's see. Oh, another chat jump, so I don't know what's going on. Vooper, Onyx is really why I'm here. Isn't he the best? He's a good little guy. Let's see here. ASAP Bro, really think September is the best month for Nintendo to release Breath of the Wild 2. The sooner the better. Why not?
And September is my birthday month, Andre, so
all right.
It's September
hey, man.
or October.
It's an L I'm willing to accept. I'll still consider it a win that I'll be right about them coming out this year, so I'm fine with that. Javier Vasquez, why the heck isn't Andres working at Nintendo? He's so well versed in all the technical info regarding Nintendo hardware. It's a wonder why he's not the one making the games himself. I really appreciate that. I don't consider myself like a very technically savvy person. I mean,
I'm more of the tech guy of the podcast.
Yeah. And I'll also tell you that I would love to pitch ideas and help design games from, like, you know, an idea perspective, right? Like, but in terms of programming stuff, no, that's not my thing. But I really do feel like I could offer good input in terms of, like, just how to construct a game from a design perspective, what will be quality gameplay concepts. But, you know, I'm entirely content with making videos and doing cool skits and things of that nature moving forward. And maybe who knows, maybe that it gets me even closer to the game industry. Maybe I do someday can offer like more creative input for games. I would love that. Super Chris, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the mods. Vooper, D, Fox, you all have been great tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a wild crowd tonight at a few
wild
points.
Crowd, my friends. Thanks. Most of you are still around. It was past midnight. Really appreciate it, guys. Javier, Andres should do bets about what they'll reveal on E3 just to see how smart they are to predict Nintendo's business tactics. Like, I'll tell you that right now, I have the gamble for Breath of the Wild 2 and Switch Pro. I'm going to wait until we get confirmation of that before I jump to the next gamble. Okay, Onyx. Onyx disagrees. He's like, no, you need to gamble now. Gamble all your money. Gamble me away.
Gamble addiction.
No. So, we'll see. After E3, we'll see what happens. So much is going to change. And then at that point, you know, I'll do another. We'll see. because I was right about the Pokemon situation. I put a gamble out for that one. Didn't have to do the Naked Snow Angel, so that worked out well. I'm very worried about having to eat this dubious food though, so we'll see. But the time will come where another gamble may occur. The Joker, how you doing? Do you think the Odyssey team could also be working on a follow-up to Odyssey as well as Donkey Kong? Yeah, I do. I actually expect that. So it kind of can go a few different ways, right? If this is like a full-on 3D Donkey Kong game, then maybe not. Like they might have like concepts and ideas, but they're still in a very early stages for it. And we don't see this next 3D Mario till like the next new Nintendo system. But if it's a side-scrolling Donkey Kong game, then what that tells me is that this is more of a side project while they're working on that. And that's assuming it's the Odyssey team, right? We've heard EPD from a few different reports. Maybe it's not the Odyssey team themselves, but more like an offshoot of them, some younger developers potentially. I can't say for sure what's going on with that. I really feel like I shouldn't say for a fact, but with great confidence, I believe a new Donkey Kong game is being made, and it's coming out relatively soon. That's all I can say with confidence. I think there's a really good chance it's being developed by Nintendo EPD and potentially the Odyssey team. But if it is the Odyssey team and it's a side-scrolling Donkey Kong game, absolutely. I don't think we're that far off. If it's a big 3D Donkey Kong game, I think that means maybe we have to wait a little bit longer for 3D Mario, assuming it's all by the Odyssey team. But either way, Nintendo's always going to work on Mario. It's not that far off. But we may have seen the last 3D Mario on the Switch. Because we just get Bowser's Fury. It is kind of like the second 3D Mario for the system. Let me see here. Oh, there's another super chat here from Taker610. Thank you very much. Okay, Brandon, where's your cat? Sunday cat cast. Brandon, you got to get a cat.
I have a cat that lives in my house, but it's not my cat.
You should steal it away.
Last time I tried to pet it, it tried to bite me. So I'm like, yeah. It's very conflicted. It's like, love me, no. I hate you, no. I love you, no. And I'm like, pick something.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's bipolar cat.
Bipolar cat.
We'll have to do a cats and games stream. Play like Smash Brothers with our cats on our laps.
Yeah, Cameron, how many cats do you have? There's at least 2.
I have 3 actually.
Okay, trifecta.
Yeah. Yeah, you know how they say crazy cat ladies? I guess I'm crazy cat man.
Well,
there was a point where I had 19 cats.
What?
But it was only because the one cat we had 18 babies.
What?
Holy hell.
Yeah. It had a really big litter, and we just gave them away. Like, we kept, like, I think we had 4 then after we gave most of them away.
Oh, okay.
We kept 3 of the babies, and then the rest of them gave them away.
I'll tell you
Way
that
too many cats.
Onyx, like, I used to live with my brother not too long ago, like 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and Onyx was one of 3 cats. Like, so we had the mom, and then we had, okay, Onyx, yes, we were talking about you, but I need you to go down, not on the keyboard. So there were 3, and there was a dog. That was hectic. Now it's just him and I mean, I have a roommate and stuff, but you know, actually there's a corgi staying in my apartment for this week. We're taking care of our friend's dog. But yeah, pets are awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll see here. Oh, ASAP Rel added me. And GameBird Classic, my birthday's in September too. Switch Plus and Breath of the Wild 2 in September, please. ASAP Rel, Cameron, for the both of you, if it happens in September, happy birthday, congratulations. That's fine. It could totally happen then. Maybe Donkey Kong comes out in October afterwards.
I'm getting Skyward Sword in my month.
Right?
July, yeah.
Yeah.
A few ads here. The Joker, I'm doing good, dude. Thanks for asking. It's been a while. I switched back to this account for a minute. Haha, I'm going along with your thinking too. Okay, cool. I'm glad we're kind of on the same page here. The Joker. One last thing. Are you planning on live streaming E3? Yes. Yes, I am.
Probably. I might just hop
Yeah.
on a call with Andres and not stream it on my own channel.
You're always welcome, Brandon. Yeah, I plan on streaming E3. The problem is Nintendo has done a great job of not telling us when they're gonna have their direct. So my thing is trying to figure out if I have to, like, I scheduled one day off in that week to kind of give me a little bit more wiggle room in terms of like maybe being able to like produce more content about E3 and Nintendo. But my goal is to live stream it, but a lot of it is dependent upon timing. I mean, I'll be frank, there's a really good chance that I will just do my best to switch around my schedule or something to make sure I can live stream the direct. I have a hard time. It's gonna be really hard for me to not do that. So the goal is to live stream, but once Nintendo actually announces when the direct will be, I will stream that. Now, if you're asking me if I'm gonna live stream most of E3, no. Nintendo stuff beyond the direct, we'll see. Maybe there's a possibility of that. At least expect me to stream the direct. That I think is a likelihood. Everything else will kind of have to wait and see. Actually, again, I'm not sure because of the work, but once Nintendo announces their plans, I will tell you guys what I'm going to do. So don't worry. At the very least, content will be coming, and I will be attempting to at least stream the direct. And yes, Vooper, Twyla is here. Vooper saying my bet is Tuesday. Tuesday, I think, is a pretty decent bet. I think I heard, I don't know where, but I heard somewhere there was suggestion that the Nintendo would be at the end. I can see that. Now, the weird thing is,
They usually towards the end.
Yeah, when do they do Treehouse? Do they just have the direct at the beginning of the day, and then they just have Treehouse all throughout? Or maybe is it like, maybe do they do their direct on a Monday, have Treehouse throughout Monday and Tuesday? You know, or maybe does Nintendo go beyond the E3 dates and do Treehouse beyond that as well? Like, what's stopping them, right? Because they're not actually at a live event. So
yeah.
That's possible.
They don't always do a 3-day show, though. The many times they only do a 2-day show, they have
Nintendo,
as
right?
you were saying. Yeah, Nintendo.
Yeah. Like, we're assuming they don't do it on Sunday, but they could conceivably still do it on Sunday too. Like, who's to say they don't just have their direct after Microsoft's on Sunday or before?
I feel like that won't happen.
We'll see.
I don't think they've ever done that before.
I'm not sure. I want to kind of go back and look on that.
It's a weird year there. It's a weird year though too. So it's like this is like a completely new style of E3. So I mean, who knows how different format's gonna end up being than what we're used to.
But for Nintendo, it's kind of the same.
Yes,
That's what they already do.
Except like Treehouse will be interesting because usually, you know, it's on the show floor immediately after the presentation.
They'll just have a virtual show floor. Just a little
Yeah,
room.
I mean, I still I'm not. We've speculated on it before. Like, once Nintendo makes their announcement, they might have like a nice little website tour thing that we can kind of play around with, right? We may even be able to play around with it before E3 shows up. So, you know, maybe more things divulge and once it direct comes and things of that nature. But I think there might be something to that. But we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. I definitely think we're getting announcements this week. Something's happening this week, I believe. I hope it's not more rumor. I mean, I'm okay with rumors. We talk about that a lot on this channel, but I think we're ready for some like hard news from Nintendo. Let's see. Super Chris asks, "How hyped are you about E3?" I'm very stressed because I've made it my job to cover E3, but I also have a day job as well, and there's a lot going on there. So like, it's gonna be a really, really busy, hard, challenging time for me. But at the same time, I am still super excited about what we're gonna see. It's constantly on my mind. Like, I am looking forward to this. At the very least, we're getting Zelda stuff, but I think there's a lot more than that. So I'm super excited for this for a number of reasons, to see the games, to cover it, to talk about it, to figure out what's coming beyond that once we get even more clues. Like, I love just getting more clues and seeing what's coming next. Like, you know, I'm super ecstatic just to see everything Nintendo's been sort of holding back. I think it's going to be a really good time.
I think after they announce the Switch Pro, their E3 dates, that's when it might sink in for me that E3 is right around the corner. Because it's still, for some reason, I feel like it still feels like it's kind of far-ish. But once they actually announce the plans, show off that Switch Pro, that's when the hype's going to really start for me, I think.
I've been riding that hype train. I love this time of year. I love E3 so much. You know, as a gamer, like, it's so cool to have all these great announcements, just coming at you all at once. It's so exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you get like a shocker reveal or a series you've been wanting for a long time and you had no idea it was coming, and they just have that one more thing moment that blows your, like Breath of the Wild 2, that just like blew, like no one was even talking about seeing Breath of the Wild 2 that I know of at E3. It kind of just was that whoa moment. And so it's really cool. It's especially cool as a content creator, but as a fan of Nintendo, it's like I can't help. I love hype. Like, and yeah, I get let down sometimes. I get disappointed, but it's a company I love so much, that's so dear to me. So dear to me, and knowing that we're going to be seeing a real substantial look at Breath of the Wild 2, my favorite series of all time, is enough to have me, and just that is enough for me. So everything else we get is just bonuses. I'd like if we get Metroid, Smash characters, like that's all amazing bonuses, but just getting to dive on Zelda.
They could literally pull a 2016 and pretty much just show Zelda, and I'd be like, oh, cool, this is great.
Yeah.
8 hours of Zelda Treehouse, let's go.
Yeah. I would like to point out we technically don't know if Breath of the Wild 2 will be at the show, but we all just believe with an incredible level of confidence that it will be there.
Yeah.
So, I expect it. I will be so shocked and probably also mortified if it's not.
I'll cry.
Yeah. I don't think we have to worry about that, though. I'm pretty sure we're going to see the game at E3. I will tell you, though, as we sort of talked about a little bit more, that Switch first look, when we get that Switch Pro first look trailer, assuming that's exactly what it is, I can kind of see it being mostly just without gameplay. Like, there will be some gameplay. There will be. But I think a lot of it will be maybe just showcasing older games getting improvements. And then maybe at the very end, it teases Breath of the Wild 2. And they tell us the release date or release window for Switch Pro, but not Breath of the Wild 2. But it'll be sort of implied, because it'll be kind of used like as that last little teaser to sort of hype things up. And then at E3, during the Direct, maybe we get a trailer then, and then they sort of announce the release date for that, and then we see how they line up, and we're like, oh, okay, yep, this is their plan. They're coming out together, September or October maybe. I can kind of see that happening. And the reason why I'm thinking that now is just because as we were sort of talking about it, like, it would be kind of weird if Nintendo shows off the new Donkey Kong, the new Metroid, the new Bayonetta 3, and Breath of the Wild 2 during this overview trailer, and then we're left with what surprises during the Direct? Like, there could still be some surprises, but I feel like they'll take out a lot of wind out of the sail of the Direct itself. Of course, just getting like more information on those games is still gonna be exciting, but I think that wow factor, that surprise factor, seeing it for the first time, you'll lose some of that oomph if you just show them in the first look trailer. So I think
the only game that they would hint at would be Breath of the Wild 2. That's it.
Yeah. And an easy way to show off the tech without spoiling things or killing the hype for some of these big new games is to, before the little Breath of the Wild Direct or the little Breath of the Wild teaser, all they have to do is do the thing where they show what like one game looks like on the Switch, and then it swaps to the Switch Pro enhanced version of a game that's already out, to where you're actually visualizing the difference. Like, let's say the first Breath of the Wild is enhanced for Switch Pro. Let's say that, I don't know, let's say Smash Ultimate or whatever, you get my point, Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade, and it shows you that kind of like the Switch version, then swipes, and then you see the 4K 60 frames enhanced version of games that are already out. So you're like, oh wow, this looks way different. This looks awesome. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doom Eternal would be a great one, because
Yeah.
you're going from like 540p 30 FPS to potentially 4K 30 or 4K 60.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
Yeah, just talk about this more now. I feel like it doesn't really make more sense that most of the overview trailer will just be talking about the features of the system itself and showcasing games that we already know about. They already exist. They're already available to play is what I mean. But at the very end, a Breath of the Wild 2 teaser I think is possible, just to kind of, because we already know, the thing about Breath of the Wild 2 is that we've already seen the game to an extent. So just to give us a little other glimpse at the end, that's not really taking any wind out of that sail at all. It's just getting us more ravenous for information on the game.
We've already seen the game. We already know we're getting information this year. We already suspect highly that it's going to be at E3. I feel like it wouldn't really spoil anything to say it.
Yeah, so I guess...
say what everybody's been thinking.
Yeah, so I guess what makes most sense is that we're going to get this first look trailer maybe Tuesday or tomorrow, right? Has it been announced already? Let me check. I
feel like the comments would be exploding if it was.
You're probably right. So like, yeah, it hasn't happened yet.
There's several people refreshing their Twitter feed at the moment.
Right now. Yeah.
And have been the whole podcast.
Yeah, so not yet, but soon, within the coming days, well, I think we'll get like a trailer, right? Again, we don't know exactly when it's going to show off, but we're expecting this week. That happens, and then after that, Nintendo announces their E3 plans. Like I see that happening. Like we get the trailer, and then after that they do that. That makes the most sense to me. But just continue on the chat here, a couple more, and then we'll close things out. Ridiculous Richie 89. Do you think Metroid Prime Trilogy is coming? Yes, I believe it's real. I think it's coming. I just think it's a matter of when. And unfortunately, I think that when is not this year. I think you can look forward to a new Metroid game this year, but a side-scrolling one. And then maybe next year, Prime Trilogy. That's what I'm thinking. Yep. We'll see, though.
Yep.
Animations. Do you think Nintendo will continue doing an out-of-nowhere announcement and then releasing later? Do you mean, like, dropping the first look trailer without any sort of heads up? Yes. I think the Direct will be announced ahead of time because it's an E3 Direct.
Yeah.
Their
E3 presentation isn't just going to spontaneously start. You know, they'll definitely.
Yeah. That would oh my.
Horrible.
The mayhem that would ensue if that were to occur, right? Like, imagine like the E3 Direct is actually happening before E3, like it's actually next week. It's gonna happen like at a random Wednesday, and it just goes live, and it's just like, oh yeah, we're streaming our E3 Direct now. Enjoy, and everyone's like at work and like, oh my god, like no, that would. There would be
E3
fire.
Itself has guidelines on how soon you can announce it as well. Like they probably have their own internal timeline.
I mean, Nintendo is
hey, we know it's your own thing, but you have to announce it by
Nintendo's one of the two top contributors to E3, so they're absolutely gonna do something to line up with the dates. So don't worry about that. Grupo Media. Hey, my birthday's on January 28th too. What a coincidence. Enjoy Legends Arceus. It's gonna be a great game, I hope. Let's see here. Blue Arrow asks, I think this will be the last question for the night. Andres, I know you focus on Nintendo, but are you excited to see what Sony and Microsoft will show during their own events? I don't know if Sony has a confirmed event right now. I did watch the Horizon Forbidden West footage, not all of it. I gotta tell you, it looks beautiful, but I also should concede I didn't finish Horizon Zero Dawn. I probably should. I'm thinking about going back to it. So I'll probably do that.
This new one's got a glider though.
I noticed that. Very interesting. Also, it's interesting that they did not announce the release date. A lot of people are speculating that it has more to do with them waiting on when Nintendo does with Breath of the Wild 2. I agree. So we'll see what happens there. It's kind of interesting. But I am actually, I do eventually probably want to get PS5, but I also got to tell you, Microsoft has been doing a great job of getting me interested in them. Halo Infinite, I'm kind of excited for that. I'm excited for the new Perfect Dark that's being worked on. There's some cool things. They have Bethesda on board now. So I'm very
anything
interested.
That comes close to my excitement for Breath of the Wild, it's Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
Because I've been playing Halo since I was like 2 or 3 years old. It's one of my favorite series. So a new open world next gen Halo game with ray tracing and all that goodness. Oh.
Yeah, that's gonna be. that's going to be a really, really good one. So I'm looking forward to that. I think there's a chance Banjo-Kazooie something could show up maybe, so I'm kind of interested. And there's also... Go on.
You always do this to me with the Banjo-Kazooie, man.
Well, okay, look, I mean, probably not. Let me just set that disclaimer. Probably no Banjo-Kazooie. Probably not. But I do think there is something absolutely going on between Nintendo and Microsoft. One fascinating idea is maybe like Switch Pro can run additional like games that we see on Xbox. Like, what if there's more like third party? What if there's some Microsoft exclusives on Switch Pro, right? So that would be interesting to see.
Isn't the rumor that we'd see that in the fall though?
Yes, but maybe it comes out in the fall. Maybe it's announced at E3. Like, so it's hard to say. Like, what if there's something to the Switch Pro and I don't know. This is pure like, not even speculation, wishful dreaming here. So I don't know. Something's coming to that's related between Nintendo and Microsoft. That much I can tell you with great confidence. I don't know what it is, and I don't know when they're going to announce it, because I think by this fall we will know what it is. But the question is it announced in fall or is it coming out in fall? If it's coming out in fall, you announce it beforehand. E3 seems like a good time to have major announcements, so we'll see. And again, what if Nintendo does have the Direct on a Sunday?
Yeah.
If both Nintendo and Microsoft are playing something together, they could sort of line up. Just putting it out there. Not saying it's a super likely thing to occur, but I think it's maybe a possibility. So we'll see.
I think one of the coolest things that could happen whenever we find out what's going on, if anything, between Nintendo and Microsoft, we had that awesome moment at the Game Awards where, Jeff Keighley was able to bring out Reggie Fils-Aimé, Phil Spencer, and Sean Layden, and it was really cool just seeing like the big heads of
all
these
together.
But man, I picture like a Nintendo E3 Direct or even like a major Direct, and having like Doug Bowser be like, for our next announcement, I want to bring out a special guest, and then Phil Spencer is there in the Direct and is like, hey, in partnership with Nintendo,
we're bringing Game Pass.
Yeah, we're bringing Game Pass. We're bringing xCloud to Switch, or we're bringing Rare Replay, or whatever it is.
We're working together to make Banjo and Kazooie.
It would just be really cool to see Phil Spencer, just step into frame in a Nintendo Direct or an E3 presentation, just because it's like such a wild idea. But man, it would be cool.
That would be so cool. For sure. I'm right there with you. Game Pass on Switch would be sick. I don't know how that would work necessarily because third-party relations, but
Well,
we'll see. Whoa, I said that would be the last question, but there's a couple things I want to bring up in the chat. LP said, I bet Breath of the Wild 2 has a lower budget than the original.
What?
Well, I mean, like, Breath of the Wild 1 was already created, so maybe they don't have to put in as much literal money into the project as Breath of the Wild 1, but they could still probably get more done because the engine's already there.
It's like headed towards at this point it's headed towards a longer development time. We don't have confirmation. We're all expecting it to come out this year.
Yeah.
But who knows the impacts that COVID had on this game. For all we know, it could be late 2022.
Oh God, don't say that.
Yeah, I know. I highly doubt it. But I'm just saying, for all we know,
right?
Who knows what internals? I highly doubt this with the amount of Didn't they bring on more staff with this one as well? Or am I wrong? Am I remembering incorrectly?
I don't know.
Bringing on more staff, but I could be wrong. I could be thinking of Monolith Soft because I know that they're working alongside.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point LP could be making here is that Breath of the Wild 2 could still have a lower budget than Breath of the Wild 1. That doesn't mean it's a low thing. Like Birdman here saying Breath of the Wild 1 was $120 million, and that's Intel's most expensive investment into a game. Like conceivably, maybe they only put $110 million in Breath of the Wild 2. That doesn't mean it's not going to be a huge, amazing game because they already kind of building off of something with Breath of the Wild 1. So to us, right, it still may feel like a lot more of an investment. It still feel far more ambitious and greater in scope. But in terms of like literal money investment, it might be less. Like I actually don't think that's actually a bad bet necessarily. So, you know, it also might still be wrong. They may have invested even more. Maybe they want to advance that physics engine even more so. Maybe they're trying to do crazy stuff in terms of getting open world, crazy physics engine, 60 frames per second, greater scope, 4K. Like, you know, there's reason to think there's some crazy things going on here, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad bet. At the surface, you might argue, oh, well, why would you argue that? But, you know, I think there's some reason to that, actually. Vooper, I will let you know when I get back to Horizon Zero. Maybe I should get back to that sooner. Thinking about my next big game. I'm playing Resident Evil Village, but with a couple friends, like, so not like playing it like on my own. So maybe that. Like I said, I also did download Ori and Okami, so those are kind of just like waiting there.
Dude,
so
have you played Okami?
No.
Oh man,
I know I should, right?
It's in my. That game's got to be in my top 10 games of all time. It's my favorite Zelda-like that's not Zelda. It's so good. And man, that art style is beautiful. That like paintbrush watercolor.
I mean, I had to download it because it was 50% off. So I was like, oh, well, I've been intending on getting this eventually. So, yeah.
I've never played that game, but I have watched a complete 100% playthrough of that and Okamiden.
Yeah. I have Okamiden. I've never played it. I still have it shrink wrapped actually.
Oh damn!
But I played Okami on the PS2, the Wii, the PS4, and the Switch. I have like every. Yeah, that's how much I love it.
I feel about Resident Evil 4. Play it everywhere. Every system.
Yeah.
If
Maybe
your
with
system,
Wind Waker.
That's another great one.
An Ocarina of Time. Mario 64.
Guys, I hate to kill it short.
We're actually calling it a night right now. So, guys, make sure to check out both Cameron's channel and Brandon's channel. They are linked in the description below. It's been a good discussion. I guess next week will be the last podcast before E3, probably. So if it is, it'll probably be like the final predictions discussion.
Probably be talking about the Switch Pro.
There's gonna be next week's probably gonna be a 4-hour podcast. Oh God, we'll see. Watch it be 6 hours. No, not possible.
Jeez.
No, we won't do it. But anyways, guys, thanks for stopping by. Leave a like, check out their channels. Stay tuned. Stuff is coming. Take care.
Brace yourselves.
Bye, guys.
Because you're gonna get gamed.